what are you doing? You know, keep your eye on the ball. They're saying, come on, that's a terrible call. You know, what are you doing? This is how they're looking at it. This is the wrong mental model. It's the wrong way to look at it. There's another lens how you can look at the Trump administration. I don't think it's like that at all. I don't think it's a horse race. I don't think it's a baseball game. I don't think he's our team. He's not our team representing us. Trump is a man, and he's representing himself.
Goddamn right.
And 2 years ago, he had a lot of problems. He was a man with a lot of problems.
That he was.
He was facing 100 years in prison. And that was a problem that could only be solved by becoming the president. Right? You're Trump. You're one of the most hated men in the world. You're going bankrupt. You're facing 100 years in prison. And you don't just have yourself to worry about, but your whole family. Maybe you can afford to go to prison, although you don't want to. But who's going to take care of the Trump organization? And what are those people going to do when they're out of a job? So Trump has to run for office, and he's got to win.
Howdy, fellas.
Well, how does he do that? Who's going to help him?
Nick's not doing a show tonight.
Well, it's pretty clear that after October 7th.
But I just figured I'd carry on without him and find other, go over last week and watch some other stuff.
News decided that a Republican had to win, and they didn't want it to be Trump. First, they wanted it to be DeSantis. Then they wanted it to be Haley. And Trump, as a self-advocate, fought them and got the nomination. So they got stuck with Trump. But they needed him to win. And they needed him to win, maybe to do these jobs. They needed Trump to win. Why? So they could turn Gaza into a smart city, into a blockchain smart city. They needed Trump so they could take the West Bank. They needed Trump so they could expand the Abraham Accords in Syria and Lebanon. They needed Trump so they could get their war with Iran. They needed Trump maybe to bury the Epstein files.
How is it these people?
And one way to look at Trump is that he is like a Trojan horse.
How did they get a hold of our government?
The sucker action
again
in this deal. It's not like Trump needed the Jewish money to get elected to help you out. No, he needed your votes to get elected to help the Jewish money out. And MAGA, the movement, is just a casualty. That's kind of how you have to look at it. For them, all of the hopes and dreams and aspirations that were projected onto Trump or placed onto Trump, the true belief, the following, all of this to them is an acceptable casualty. It's collateral damage. It will burn up like a rocket on re-entry. All of that is stuff that will burn up so that the payload can be delivered. And the payload is the war. The payload is the cover-up. Trump is a lame duck. He's term limited out. And this administration is really about securing as much money as possible for him and his cronies so that he can have a golden parachute. That's
it's like it's for securing that and for as much gains as Israel can secure, as much land as they can secure in the Middle East, as much money as they can pilfer from our coffers. I mean, it's like a grab bag or a gravy train, and everybody's just grabbing what they can. It fucking blows. Like, what did we do to deserve this?
What this is. When you pay very close attention, Trump coin and gold card and Trump this and Trump that, all the shit that he's selling, all the deals that he's doing on behalf of Saudi Arabia and Qatar and the Emirates and Israel, this is him building a safety net, a golden parachute for him and his family. That's what everybody in the cabinet is doing. In order to secure that, they're using the...
Yeah, and like that Howard, they're all crooked, and it's starting to become super obvious. That Howard Lutnick dude, that guy is an absolute scumbag. Like, he was a big-time Hillary advocate, or when Hillary was running and shit, he was a Hillary advocate. This dude is a straight-up Democrat. He's Jewish. He's a billionaire. This guy has made his bones off of fucking Americans, off of squeezing and wringing us out like a wet towel or something, and just wringing as much money out of us as he can get. Now he's in our government, and it's disgusting. He actually has control over shit.
Public office, the wars, the deals, all these different things. And in the process, all of that goodwill is being basically burned up as fuel. It's being eaten up and destroyed. That's really the proper mental model. I said it the other night. Trump wasn't elected and he's covering up the files, much to our dismay. Trump isn't elected and he's not doing mass deportations, to our frustration. He's not elected and he's going to war.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're like Matthew McConaughey in Interstellar. Like, what are you doing? War with Iran? What are you thinking, Merv? You know, like, no.
We're like legitimately the stand, or the fans in the stands. And this is just like the worst referee call or a bonehead play, and everybody's standing up like, oh my God, what the fuck, man? Like, how could you have done that? It's just bonehead shit that we've been getting served. That it's like we voted for very simple and straightforward stuff, you know, immigration, and I forget what the other one was. Immigration and, you know, putting a border wall, no more H-1Bs, just America first. We've gotten nothing. America first. Okay, the border, you know, that we're not having people come over, but that's not even that's just right now. It's not forever. It'll change as soon as they're not in office. And we're going to Iran, or we're going to go to war in Iran. We did bomb their nuclear sites, all kinds of goodies for Israel, things that they can that they probably literally jumped up and down for when it happened. We've gotten nothing like that. You know, everybody was celebrating when Trump won, and in retrospect, like, what? I was celebrating so that for this guy to be stuffing his pockets full, to be dropping meme coins, and just doing some overall super corrupt shit. Like he's doing shit that's we're going to have to make new legislation over, because that meme coin, I don't think he did anything illegal, but it's really corrupt, really dirty, and it doesn't look good. There's a lot of impropriety there. And it's like, at first I didn't really pay attention to some of that. Like, you know, whatever, he's doing, everything else he's doing is good. And I don't know about crypto and shit. So it's like, what, you know, maybe people are just butthurt, because that's how people were for a while, especially with like tariffs. Like I'd be watching YouTube videos for like computer shit or like networking, and the guy doing the video would like bitch about the tariffs, you know? And so I'm like, what the fuck? Why is this guy getting political? So, but I ignored it. But now it's obvious that I shouldn't have ignored it. Those guys were right. He is doing corrupt shit. And it's just, as it goes on, it's just more and more and more, or, you know, one thing after another. They ran on showing us the Epstein files, and then like boneheads, they ran on it, and then, oh, there are no Epstein files. Like, what, dude? You were in office last time when they got released. Like, we learned about this while you were still in office, bro. All this shit happened while you were still in office. The mysterious death of the guy happened while you were in office. It's a lot of impropriety, and it just looks like it's downright crooked. Crooked is a question mark.
He got elected to do those things. He got elected to bring us to war in Iran.
It's a damn shame.
To cover up the files, to bring in the H-1Bs. That's why he's there. And unless and until you understand that, It's just going to keep happening.
I don't know if you
And
guys
it will
saw.
happen again in 28 with Vance. Who is Pam Bondi? Who picked Pam Bondi, actually?
Oh, wow.
It's an important question. Anybody know where Pam Bondi comes from? These are the details you guys need to think about. You want to understand politics? Where does J.D. Vance come from? Ohio. Les Wexner is from Ohio. Vivek is from Ohio. Palmer Luckey is building his plant in Ohio. Okay, these are the things that matter. Where is Pam Bondi from? Florida. Mike Waltz, the disgraced national security advisor who sold this out to Netanyahu, is from Florida. Marco Rubio, puppet of the Adelsons, sponsor of regime change, is from Florida. Why are these people from Florida? Because Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, is from Florida. The Ballard lobbyist, she's from Florida. And she brought all the Florida creatures with her. Who else is from Florida? The Adelsons. The Adelsons are headquartered in Florida, and they sponsor everybody in Florida. Because what's Florida? It's a Jewish stronghold. South Florida is a Jewish stronghold. Pam Bondi is some idiot Zionist politician from Florida, from the DeSantis office, which is pro-Jewish. Okay? You were never going to get anything other than this. People are disappointed. You were never going to get anything other than this. It was apparent last year, in December, during the transition, when Trump was making his selections for the cabinet, and it was Rubio, Waltz, Bondi, Kristi Noem, Ratcliffe. We knew we were going to get fucked. We knew it, because that's where they came from, and that's who they are.
The SDP.
Then people are shaking their head. They're disappointed. They're surprised. You can't be. You can't be. This is what you get. I warned you about Susie Wiles. I warned you about Pam Bondi. I warned you about Rubio, Vance, Waltz, all these people.
Men and women standing for a store in that.
And now she's in the congressional hearing. They're asking her to release the files. She says, what about the stock market? We're moving on. What about our record? Yeah, what about your record? It sucks. So the Epstein files are going to destroy the Trump movement, and good. They should. The Trump movement deserves to be destroyed, and something else needs to be born from it. Something else needs to grow in its place. Something stronger, tougher, harder, more severe. And it's not J.D. Vance, I'll tell you that much.
I have chosen
by the way, where's our good
from the farm? Because places like this,
I don't know if you guys saw this,
what proper Britain is about.
but Rupert Lowe
Hard work,
dropped
responsibility, effort, duty.
big deal,
stewardship.
big things happening
This is the
in
England
the
I
UK.
know, and this is the England that I love. On a farm, you don't think in election cycles or headlines or polling.
Like I'm
You
really
think in
happy for them,
seasons. You think
and
in
I wish we could
generations,
get something like
in
this.
what you leave behind to those who come after you. And that's why, here on the farm, I am now launching Restore Britain as a national political
Like, listen
party.
to how
I'm
he
now
says
going
it.
to dedicate my life
No.
to finding, organizing, funding, and providing hundreds of qualified candidates to present to the British people at the next general election. This process has already started, with invitations being issued to patriots in aligned political parties, Reform, the Conservatives, the SDP, Advance, and more. In local politics, we will work in partnership with localized political parties, such as Great Yarmouth First, that have the best interests of their residents at heart, combining our forces at the next general election. The men and women standing for Restore in that election will not be politicians. I promise you that.
This
They will
guy,
not be
he doesn't
failed
seem like
ministers.
he's fucking
They will
around.
not be tainted by failures of the past. They will be from business, from the military, from science, from medicine, from education, from industry, representing real communities up and down the country. Every single one will be from well outside the existing political establishment, and every single one will understand the difficult decisions that need to be taken.
I don't know if you guys
Because there are
were
no
here,
easy fixes.
but Nick, he canceled. He's not doing a show tonight. So I'm just kind of going on without him, because I'm still going to watch this stuff regardless and, think these thoughts and,
I'm not going to tell you
same
comforting
regardless.
lies about the condition of our country. I have only
February
ever been honest with the
13th,
British people.
I do believe it's kind of like an infamous holiday, if you will, because this was the day the papacy had the Knights Templar. I think this is the day they had them all assassinated.
And I will be straight with you now.
I think that's why
what is necessary
Friday the 13th
will be incredibly painful. But for the
means
first time in a very long time, voters will have a genuine alternative which is truthful with them about the scale of what now has to be done. The first priority is to control
Islo
who
a
comes
big
to our country,
Israel supporter?
and more importantly,
What I
who stays in our
understand,
country.
I thought it was reform that
Restore
were the
Britain
Israel
will not
supporters.
just stop mass immigration, we will reverse it. Every single illegal migrant will be securely detained and then deported. The message will be unrelenting. If you are in this country without our permission, you will be removed. For
See,
the
that's what
foreseeable
we need.
future, far more people must leave Britain than arrive. If a foreign national is unable to speak English, lives in social housing, claims benefits, refuses to work, fails to integrate, commits crime, or even actively hates our way of life and wishes to do us harm, then they must leave or be made
Fucking
to
A,
leave.
man. Good for them.
Restore Britain
Good
will
for
make our
them.
communities safe again for women and children. That I promise you. If that means millions go, then millions go. We're constantly told that the economy needs vast swathes of low-skilled migrants. We know that's simply not true. What we need is to get millions of healthy Brits back into work. A radical overhaul of how welfare is delivered. Protecting those in genuine need, but not funding healthy shirkers to live off the back of hard-working men and women.
Hell yeah.
If you can work, you must work. It really is that simple. Restore Britain will be abundantly clear. If you consistently refuse work, then you will lose your benefits. We will punish indolence, and more importantly, we will reward success. We will provide vast economic incentives for men and women to start businesses, generate opportunities, build wealth, and create self-sufficient families. Standing here today on the farm, I know exactly what it means to deal with energy bills, labor shortages,
I mean, this is his
regulations,
farm.
unproductive
That's pretty fucking
paperwork,
legit, if
planning
you ask me.
restrictions, tax, and endless uncertainty. The state has definitively become the enemy of the people.
Fucking A.
Restore Britain will burn away suffocating taxes on work and enterprise. We will slash unnecessary regulation. We will dismantle bloated quangos and the overbearing HR culture.
I love that term,
We must crush
quangocracy,
parasitic
or
Britain.
quangos.
We will restore long-term, stable, logical policies
Quintessentially
so that businesses
English.
can plan
Quango.
and invest and grow again. But Restore Britain is about much more than numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about who we are as a nation and who we are as a people. Britain is not just
Just keep watching.
Britain is not just an idea. Britain is not just a passport.
That's exactly what we need for America, or the wording. Britain or America is not just an idea. It's not just a fucking passport. And if that's what you think it is, fuck you and the horse you rode in on. They need to go. Because no, this isn't just like a benefit system or some kind of a, like a corporate fucking benefit or some shit.
Britain
Oh, I get
is a nation.
I get a different passport.
Britain is a people, our people.
Yeah.
And Restore Britain will never allow that to be erased. We will celebrate our Christian heritage and the identity that built and
Fucking
shaped
A.
this country. Responsibility, restraint, forgiveness, duty, and fairness. In short, a high-trust society. That will mean defending our culture. That will mean resisting the relentless creep of radical Islam. That will mean banning the burqa, outlawing Sharia law, blocking cousin marriages, and reimposing our Christian-based rule of law. A Restore Britain government would legislate to ensure that no halal or kosher slaughter
Like,
on British soil.
this is what they
Britain,
need. This
and
is what
will
we
do
need.
things our way. This political party now exists for one reason: to restore Britain,
Fuck yeah.
to make it a better, safer, and more prosperous place for British men and women to
Damn
raise
right.
their families. It will be difficult and it will be painful, but I assure you, it is possible. I hope you will consider joining me on this journey and becoming a member of our party. It is our country.
I really
It
don't
is
like.
now our collective responsibility to act. Together, we will restore Britain. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah, I was trying to read what you were saying there, Valenti. But yeah, Lowe is actually going to do that, and I like that. That's the whole reason that he started that party.
More people will come.
Because
More people.
that
because
scumbag
if
Nigel Farage, he's like a half measure. Oh, I'll get rid of the woke, but this country just isn't ready for mass deportations. We're just not ready for this. And this, just giving bullshit mealy mouth answers. He's a scumbag. At least, and that's why, and Lowe was in reform, but Nigel Farage, I guess, felt he was starting to overshadow Farage himself. So he like torpedoed the guy and totally trumped up some false bullshit to try and bury the guy, try and destroy him politically. And now Rupert Lowe is actually the more viable candidate, at least to my mind. And to the point where, like I was watching Lotus Eaters, those guys are genuinely excited. They were giddy. They were legitimately giddy. And I don't know how many times I've seen them talking about Farage where they're just like, he ain't the guy. He ain't the guy. He's just not going to give us what we want. He's not going to give us what we're voting for. And like, I feel, bad. I felt bad for them genuinely because they had no hope, nothing on the horizon, just time after time, they're getting the shit end of the stick. The white people in England. And finally, they're actually getting an avatar, somebody that they can vote for that will give them what they want. And he's starting a party, so he's going to provide them with, I'm not going to say honest, but decent candidates for all their little local elections. He's going to be providing those for the whole country. I mean, and they're in a little bit worse place than we are. It's a smaller country, No, they're getting a way out. Look, they're finally getting a way out of that shit. At least to my mind, that's what it looks like to me. They're finally getting a route out of that trash system that they have. I mean, and they're lucky because they actually have a parliamentary system. Their parliament is sovereign. They can literally throw out all the laws. When they elect a parliament, that parliament can scrap every law that they've ever had and start from scratch. They have that possibility. Whereas we don't. That's not even on the cards. It's not in the cards for us. We kind of have to work within a framework. I mean, and that helps us at the same time. Like, even the next government has to work within that framework. But, we're bound by it. The Constitution, we're bound by these amendments in the Constitution, whereas they're not bound by that, but that also leaves them open to insane politicians that can hijack shit. And next thing you know, in very short order, they can have an insane governing structure. And I feel bad. I was feeling bad for them with and then they can get minority governments that never win a majority mandate. And that just seems crooked to me. It just seems wrong.
Fuck, is this woo? It's really hard to be me. Damn right, you shouldn't have done that. Running her over with a car, cutting her head off. You don't deserve me at my realest nigga if you can't handle me at my realest nigga.
Jake Shields, me daughter was raped on the island.
Dude, literally. It's literally Epstein Island and the Holocaust are like the same thing now. You know, with the Holocaust, they said lampshades, bars of soap, human chess pieces, and masturbation machines.
That's such bullshit.
Now with Epstein Island, they're gutting women and eating the fecal matter out of their intestines.
Dude.
They're eating people and doing time travel. They're cloning human beings and making them transgender. It's like, how do you not realize this is the same thing? And it's like, I'm not an Epstein Island denier. I'm just saying it wasn't 6 million. I'm just saying there weren't any human chess pieces.
There weren't people.
It's sensitive. Because that is an atrocity that happened, and people starved to death and got typhus, and some of them were shot by firing squads.
I saw people posting this
And they were labor
uncritically,
camps, and
again,
it was
with tons of
brutal.
engagement.
And you joke about that all the time. That's
And
pretty
so,
insensitive.
when we
Now,
talk-
I make a joke about, like, you know, girls go on a casting couch and people go, what the fuck? Well, are we trolls or are we moral fags?
Moral.
Are we
fags.
trolls or are we moral fags? You must choose.
Man.
Call it. Are we trolls or are we moral fags? I'm a troll. Born a troll, die a troll. These are just NPCs. You're finding out
Was
that
it
these
RNA
NPCs
vax?
never had a sense of humor. It used to be funny to just troll everybody and say, like, hey, Hitler did nothing wrong. 6 million? I don't think so. That used to be funny because people would get mad. Now, like, the NPCs caught on, and now they just use it to, like, reinforce their morality. They're like, Hitler was base because he would kill pedophiles. Good guy was good because he would stop the bad people. It's like,
I don't
okay,
know.
so you're
know
just
about
using this to reinforce and validate a moral point of view. That's not funny. That's not challenging.
The Super Bowl
you know
shit
what's
was
Chad?
like, I didn't watch it, but I've been seeing the clips today. Just today. I didn't even see the clips over the week, but just today seeing the clips. Oh my God. That halftime shit, the TPUSA thing, bro. Like, I get why he was going in on that shit so hard. That was so cringe. So cringe. It was I couldn't watch more than a clip. It was making me sick. You know, like, to see these fat, stupid looking oaf white guys like dancing by themselves on. It was weird, man. It was some weird shit.
I'll tell you what's Chad. Eating your vegetables and going to bed at a reasonable hour. That's what a real Chad does. It's like, dude, Chad is funny because he's carefree. Chad is funny because he's doing things that are ridiculous. Like, in the old days, you would say, the Chad eats like garbage and doesn't care and is fine anyway. The Chad Trump eats cheeseburgers and lives to be 100. The joke is like the carefree guy has the better outcome. It's funny. It's
that
ironic.
is funny. Because that's
absurd.
how it goes
it's a subversion of
sometimes.
expectations. Then Chad became, oh, you know what's really Chad? When you have a traditional wife and you have 10 white children and eat homegrown vegetables. And it's like, that's not funny. You're just saying, like, you're just expressing approval for a lifestyle. You're just saying the thing that I like is good. This cultural symbol for goodness, I'm applying it to this thing that I approve of. Long story short, fuck Goyim. Fuck Goyim. I fucking hate stupid Goyim. They ruin everything.
Dr. MC Spankus sent $20. Saw some guy post an obviously iPhoto
So
of Mondavi
weird.
with Epstein and insist it was real. Half of the replies are barely sentient retards saying this is fake.
You know
Rock told
I
me.
did that.
People don't realize how cooked this shit is. The median IQ is easily
It's
a full
so
standard
cooked.
deviation to the left of the mean. The herd must be called further.
It really does, man. It's so cooked. Hey, Guac, is this real? Guac, is this true? Like, we are raising an entire society of numbskull goitards that are just pleading with Grok.
Think-
Guac, is this true? We're gonna and I've literally encountered
what
that. I'm
Jeffrey
in like
Epstein
a
was
debate with
doing.
somebody, and they're like, "Hey,
Of course, this
ChatGPT,
is
is
in the
that
service
true?"
of understanding
and
what Jeffrey
ChatGPT
Epstein
spits out a
was.
paragraph. It doesn't even
What he
know.
did
think
And you're
actually-
like, is
his
this what
purpose.
society has
And
become?
therefore, what he was
It's like,
really
you can go
involved
to
in,
one of
who
these
he was
Goyim and say,
associated with,
"Wait,
Friday.
the sky is
and
blue," and they'll say,
the kind of
"Guac, is that
operation he was
true?
running and why
Is this
he
guy
existed.
Like, this was
And as
a
I
good-
said
a
on
really good
Monday,
show.
so much of that is problematic.
I only seen it.
We
the
went
once,
through on
too.
Monday some of the most
viral claims that have emerged from the Epstein files. And I went through some of them on the show. I even talked about them on Telegram too. For example, there was an email that said that Epstein made a bank transfer to an entity called Baal. And this is something that the conspiracy theorists took and ran with. And they said that this was evidence, this was established fact, and supported the claim that Epstein was some kind of occult Satanist. They went through these 3 million documents. They did a command find or an AI search. They found the name of an ancient deity mentioned in the Bible. And they said, this email, which is already vague and ambiguous, this mention of Baal, this verifies the claim that he was some sort of satanic Kabbalist. Well, we found out that this was most likely a transcription error. And whether the original document was scanned or maybe the entry was mistyped, upon further inspection, it was very clear that it didn't say Baal at all. It actually said bank name. It was part of a receipt for a wire transfer, and under that was all the other information you would expect on a wire transfer. Routing number, bank account number, all of the different things that you would see on that sort of receipt. And it would actually make a lot more sense that the entry said bank name rather than Baal. That's one of those that got millions and millions of views, hundreds of thousands of likes, retweets, engagements. And surely you have many people in the country that now perceive that as an established fact.
God.
That is in their mind. That's in the consciousness that is something that actually happened. He's a satanic pedophile. There are other instances in the files. For example, a well-known Indian sent an email to Epstein talking about doing hot yoga in New York City. And the email was very vague, very short. He said 30 between 6 and 7 at 9 a.m. This was one of the emails. That was the line. I saw people posting this uncritically, again, with tons of engagement, and they said, well, surely that means there are 30 6 to 7-year-old children who are showing up for hot yoga at 9 a.m. in New York City. Like, that even makes sense. But of course, people saw the numbers. That is something that confirmed their pre-existing bias, their pre-existing theory about Epstein. And so people didn't even think about it. Think about how ridiculous that would be, that there's a class of 37-year-olds doing hot yoga in the morning. How would that even be possible? How does that even make any sense? I don't think there's a lot of 7-year-olds doing hot yoga in the morning on a weekday. Well, which are not corroborated, which don't even make sense. Other things which have been debunked are being pooled together, and without being fact-checked, without being scrutinized, they're assembled together and creating a narrative, which then goes out into the zeitgeist. And now you have basically this consensus opinion forming in society that what Epstein is, when we think Epstein, what he is a satanic pedophile running the government. Our government's run by satanic pedophiles. And this is what I call the Epstein myth. This is the hoax. And it is a hoax. As we laid out on my show on Monday,
he wasn't run by Jewish billionaires.
So much of the data points in that myth are just not true. They're either not substantiated, not corroborated, or to the extent that there are
the guy was a Jewish
that have been put together, upon closer investigation, they turn out not to be real at all. Why is this problematic? Because when we look at the evidence and we actually scrutinize what is occurring here, we find there's a very different picture of Epstein. We find the real Jeffrey Epstein.
It's quite annoying, too, to see the media, to see Trump's administration. I mean, because without a doubt, Trump's administration most certainly realizes the implications on Israel. And they're trying to run cover and, mitigate that disaster. And I don't know what the media's motivation is necessarily, but they're doing the exact same thing. I don't know if it's because of Israel, which most likely, but they're running cover as well. They're trying to say that he was a Russian asset or this asset or that. No, it's pretty clear where his allegiance lied. I mean, to anybody who's being
the real
objective.
Jeffrey Epstein is quite different than the myth of Jeffrey Epstein. And the real Jeffrey Epstein, I don't think, is a satanic pedophile that runs the government. The real Jeffrey Epstein is a Jewish fixer.
Yeah.
That's the real Epstein. That is his essence. That is what defines him. That is the milieu that created him. That is the higher society that empowered him with money and connected him to powerful people. And ultimately, those are the interests that he served. And once you create this dichotomy, once you create this dialectic between the Epstein myth and the Epstein reality, you start to see that maybe the former is actually a kind of a limited hangout, which is to say that there
Absolutely.
are selected facts or stories or data points that are introduced to the public, the most salacious,
I
the
feel
most
like,
sensational,
really,
the most outrageous. And
the fact that we don't know, like what you were saying there, Goldie, the fact that we don't have all the answers and the fact that it's been such a, it's almost like this ridiculously foggy and obfuscated, it's like a murky pond. That, to me, kind of screams intelligence, operation. To my mind, like, this is exactly what you would see.
literally curated for public consumption as a form of a giant diversion, as a form of a giant red herring.
What is it diverting us from?
If the public is so fixated on things which are debunked, not real, but also things that are maybe extremely sensational, they get caught up in a completely different narrative, a completely different vision and version of who Epstein was. And then they never actually get down into the real facts, the real information, and ultimately, which elucidates the real Epstein. And so in a way, it's sort of like a layered psyop. You have this figure who is in the center, regardless of what you think about what he did and what he is, it is inarguable.
They got this guy was their fixer for what, 20, 30 years? Think about how much bang for their buck they got when he was alive, or allegedly not dead. Anyway, think about how much bang for their buck they got out of this guy while he was alive. They probably blackmailed half or more than half of our politicians. They got a lot of mileage out of Epstein. And they're still getting mileage out of him. Now he is just a red herring, a diversion. Now they can run game in the background while the plebs are worried about this super convoluted character that they invented. I mean, it's genius. They got something on the front end with him and on the back end. He's still paying dividends for these greedy fucks.
He is at the center of higher society. He is a connector and a nexus for business, intelligence, government, for different countries. He's at the center of elite society. This person is exposed completely to the world, and all the people and how they operate and their dealings are exposed with him. Their emails, their investments, the places they went, the people that they knew, it has all come to light because he went down, the DOJ collected all of his information, and now it is in full public view, and there is attention on it, lots of attention. Now, how might you obfuscate the truth if it's in plain sight? How would you obfuscate if you are these powerful people and you want to protect this racket and you want to conceal something which has been so exposed and for which there's so much attention on it? How would you conceal it? Well, you would probably obfuscate it. If you can't exactly hide it, if you can't get people to stop talking about it, maybe you give them something else to talk about. Maybe you give them something more interesting to talk about, something more sensational, more extreme. You give them something that is actually not real. You don't have to get them to forget about Epstein. You just need them to not really understand what Epstein was doing. This is why it is so important to separate the facts from the fiction. So like I said, Monday we went through who Jeffrey Epstein is not, and we looked at fake images created by AI. Like I said, we went through some of these emails, many of them certainly eyebrow-raising and concerning, but ambiguous. Some of them completely fake, again, containing errors. Some of them are forgeries. Some of them are just misunderstood. People didn't do the due diligence. Tonight, I want to go into the real Epstein. And like I said, I'm going to paint a picture for you based on the real evidence inside the emails and the real data, which supports the claim, supports the vision of a Jeffrey Epstein who serves a very particular function, which is called the fixer. I don't think that Epstein is somebody who was engaged in magic rituals. I don't think he was somebody that was a religious Satanist. I don't even think, strictly speaking, he was a pedophile.
You got to be pretty stupid.
And I think he liked younger girls and probably a sex addict and had eclectic tastes, interest in sadomasochism, interest in pornography and things like that. And I think that what Epstein did for his clients is solve problems. Solving problems using his connections in government, in business, solving problems related to money, but also political problems. Also providing a service, which was that he did traffic women. And so for the rich and powerful, one of the ways that he would get connections to serve his clients was introducing them to women. And the women were younger, but I don't think they were prepubescent. And again, that speaks to what his real role was. The age of the women kind of gives you a clue about what he was actually up to. Were they the youngest women possible because he was just that evil, or were they women who were just young enough where they could be leveraged as blackmail material, young enough where they're attractive to an older man who might not be a total sicko, but just a regular old pervert? I think that tells us what his real function was.
To my mind,
I want to talk about this article from Israel Times.
A chomo is somebody who likes, like I've said it before, prepubescent. I mean, when you think of a pedophile or a pedophile, or when people are in jail, in their mind, a pedophile is somebody, what do they call it, a child diddler or something like that? That's what that is. Little prepubescent children. Those are the guys that die when they go to jail. It's like statutory rape and stuff. There's a reason why it's called statutory rape, because it has something to do with laws, statutory. It's not actually, it's rape because the girl can't consent, because the person can't consent. They're not an adult. They're not of legal age to consent to that act. And, that's kind of it's a law, so it's made up, it's imaginary, if you will. And if you break it, I mean, if there were no law.
Factions, they have different intelligence agencies, they have different political parties. They have a right and a left. They have Israeli military intelligence. They have Shin Bet. They have Mossad. What I hear all day long about Epstein is he's Mossad, he works for Mossad. And it's interesting that since these files have been released by the DOJ last week, the Prime Minister of Israel actually came out and addressed the allegations head on. And Netanyahu said on Twitter yesterday that Epstein did not work for the state of Israel. But it's interesting what he said in particular in denying the claim.
Right. He's on the other side of the aisle.
There's all these allegations that Epstein is a Jewish spy, works for Mossad, works for Israel.
The
Prime Minister of Israel weighs in
right-wing
and says that's not true. Epstein never worked for Israel. He said the reason why is because Epstein's connections were to Netanyahu's political rival, Ehud Barak. So for those that don't know, Netanyahu is on the political right in Israel.
Oh, no way.
Netanyahu is a lifelong member of the Likud party, which is a far-right party in Israel. And they've been in power virtually the entire time for the last 50 years, with some exceptions.
Really, though?
And so Netanyahu, in order to throw off these allegations that Epstein was in any way involved with him or with Israel in general, he says, well, that's impossible because Epstein worked with my political opposition, Ehud Barak, who comes from the left. And Netanyahu says Ehud Barak, being of the left, is fundamentally opposed to Israel's national interest.
Wow.
This is what Netanyahu had to say. This is from the Times of Israel. It says, quote, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Friday that the, quote, unusual close relationship between former Prime Minister Ehud Barak and Jeffrey Epstein proves the latter was not an Israeli agent.
My internet
Netanyahu
just dropped.
wrote, quote, Jeffrey Epstein's unusual close relationship with Ehud Barak does not suggest Epstein worked for Israel. Actually, it proves the opposite.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell just happened there.
Stuck on his election loss from over 2 decades ago, Barak has for years obsessively attempted to undermine Israeli democracy by working with the anti-Zionist radical left in failed attempts to overthrow the elected Israeli government. Barak's personal fixation led him to engage in activities publicly and behind the scenes to undermine the government of Israel, including fueling mass protest movements, foment.
Something that really starting to piss me off is that in Israel, they get the truth or more of the truth, or at least a less obfuscated truth. It's not necessarily the truth, but their propaganda they get more closely resembles reality than us. How is it that Israel knows more about what's actually going on in the world than American citizens? Like it's crazy. Our government will just flat out bold-faced lie to us about all kinds of shit, about Israel especially. But over in Israel, their newspapers and their news is telling them the real deal. Like, you can find out what is actually going on by looking at Israeli media, Israeli news. They actually know the score. They actually tell their citizens what is going on. It's disgusting.
Unrest and feeding false media narratives. The U.S. Justice Department's release of millions of internal documents related to Epstein last week revealed and confirmed his ties to many prominent people in politics, finance, academia, and business, including Barak, who succeeded Netanyahu as prime minister from 1999 to 2001, and then served as Netanyahu's defense minister from 2009 to 2013. There is no evidence of wrongdoing by Barak, a former IDF chief who was Netanyahu's commanding officer in the elite Matkal unit. However, after a previous Justice Department release of Epstein files showed the financier claiming to have advised Barak's 2019 election campaign, Netanyahu in November shared an article from an anti-Israel socialist outlet which suggested, based on Epstein's ties to Barak, that the sex offender had once worked for Israeli intelligence. So this is sort of interesting. Netanyahu gets up and says, there is no proof that Epstein worked for Israel or worked for Mossad. Why? Because Epstein's connection to Israel was a left-wing politician named Ehud Barak.
Most Jewish people are
He
left-wing.
says, and for that reason, and reason being rather, he said Ehud
As far as
Barak,
I'm
being of
concerned,
the political
anyway.
left, stands in opposition against a right-wing government. Ehud Barak is working with the Israeli left to protest the right-wing Israeli government with mass protests and influence campaigns in media. So this would sort of be like if Donald Trump said Epstein could never be in the CIA because he's associated with Bill Clinton, who is anti-American. It would sort of like be the same thing as saying that. Epstein could never be a CIA agent. He could never be an American asset because his only connection to the government was former Democrat President Bill Clinton. And how does that make sense? Well, even though Bill Clinton was the former president, he's an anti-American, radical left-wing guy. He wants America to be destroyed. It doesn't really make any sense. Ehud Barak was a former prime minister of Israel and served in Netanyahu's government as the defense minister. Epstein's connection to the Israeli government is Ehud Barak. We'll go through some of their connections in a moment. He worked for Netanyahu, was the head of the country, and maybe more importantly than all of that, Ehud Barak was the former head of Israeli military intelligence. Ehud Barak served in the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, and rose through the ranks inside the Israeli intelligence community and eventually became its head at the end of the last century in the 80s and 90s. What's notable about this is that ever since Ehud Barak left politics in the early 2000s, which he did for about a decade, he then became a salesperson for Israeli intelligence companies. He worked with Unit 8200, which is
disgusting.
Israeli intelligence, one of their elite units,
The pipeline
to infiltrate Silicon Valley.
from national militaries or the militaries. No, it's at 1.25 speed. But the soldiers and officers, the pipeline from the military to these businesses, to these huge corporations. Like, how is it that easy to get citizens of a country to basically sell out their country? Like, it's so fucked up. Like, is that what West Point is for? Is that what Annapolis is for? To like groom people so that they feel comfortable with fucking their own people over? I mean, seriously. Because these officers, they become generals or high-ranked officers, and then they go to work for these companies, Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman and shit. The next thing you know, they're bilking the shit out of them, out of the American people on behalf of some amorphous piece of shit military industrial company, excuse me. And it's the same, like Palantir. Like, I don't get, how do people just, it's like they defect from being a citizen. How did they become comfortable with doing that stuff? I don't get it. Like, I wish I knew. I wish somebody could tell me.
And Unit 8200 Israeli intelligence operatives were sent out in the first 2 decades of the 21st century into the United States, specifically into California. And they were told to create internet startups, tech startups, so that they could slowly infiltrate the defense technology sector. This effort was spearheaded by Ehud Barak in close proximity.
And like Netanyahu, this scumbag, tries to tell us that we benefit from being their ally, that we gain. They give us stuff, we gain stuff. That's bullshit. They're close to us to rob us. That's it. They're this close to us to leech off of us, to take from us. And fuck these people.
And in association with,
and they wonder why everybody hates Israel.
Establishment. This is a story from the Jacobin magazine, a left-wing magazine about Epstein's ties to Barak. This is what it says. This is based on the files that came out last week. It says, quote, Jacobin looked at more than 1,000 documents from the latest trove and identified more than 60 instances between September 2010 and March 2019 in which Barak and Epstein arranged to meet face-to-face, usually in New York, but other times in Florida, Boston, Paris, or even Epstein's infamous private island, Little St. James. At least 7 of those meetings took place while Barak was still serving as Minister of Defense for Israel. That count does not include the dozens more times where the two arranged or tried to arrange to talk over the phone or via video call, nor their frequent email exchanges to each other. It also does not necessarily include the more than 24 times in that period that Barak stayed at one of Epstein's properties, typically the Upper East Side apartment building on 301 East 66th Street, which he owned, and which his staff referred to internally as simply 301. The disclosures add to the recent stream of explosive revelations about Epstein's relationship to Barak and in turn to the Israeli state. Epstein, long rumored to have ties to Israeli intelligence, has, in a series of stories by Dropsite News, been revealed to have worked with Barak to broker security agreements and arms sales on behalf of Israel.
Nick never said, it's not that Epstein didn't do anything wrong. Like, yeah, the guy did the pedophilia, all that shit, all the sexual stuff. Sure, he did that. But the reason why he's important on a national level is not because he had sex with people. That's not why he's important. That's not why we talk about him. We're talking about him because this guy is a part of this upper echelon, the Epstein class or the Jew class of the world. And, he belongs to that class, and he's been fucking America and Americans over on behalf of that class. That's why he's important. And the sex and stuff, maybe it's unrelated, but from what it looks like, that, he was doing that as a way to blackmail people. So, like, the crimes he committed, the sexual crimes, those are kind of beside the point. Like, if you ask, like, to my mind, they are beside the point. I don't really care. Yeah, so what? There are a lot, there's a lot of pedophiles. And if that's all Epstein was, he wouldn't be in the news. Even as a billionaire, he wouldn't be in the news. He's in the news because what he was doing during the day, his day job, which was, screwing us on behalf of billionaires, on behalf of Israel, the people that his allegiance lied with.
Last year, Jacobin revealed that Epstein had privately claimed to have been behind Barak's 2019 political comeback in Israel, revelations that, after being tweeted by current Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, caused a firestorm in the country. Okay? So, one of the lesser reported aspects of Epstein's life, people say, well, he is Mossad. People say he is with Israel. And in a certain sense, this is a little bit vague. This is a little bit too broad and general. And I feel like this is not being highlighted at all. What I see all day, all week on TikTok, on Instagram is satanic. He's a satanic pedophile. He's an occultist. He's a cannibal. He's part of this sort of mysterious, esoteric thing. When you drill down into it, there's nothing esoteric or mysterious at all. Huh. He was an operative working not even necessarily with Mossad in particular.
Huh. That's crazy. The fuck? Dude.
And then even at times when that former Prime Minister, Ehud Barak, was serving as the defense minister. And like I said, this guy in particular, earlier in his career, was the head of Israeli military intelligence. They together are working alongside each other on arms contracts, surveillance contracts, intelligence contracts to foreign governments all over the world and to Silicon Valley.
And it's just...
They're working together on deals with Palantir, deals with...
All of this shit is a wealth transfer from us to other people. It's insane. Or a power... They're using us like a sock puppet or something. Using our influence to benefit them. And typically to disadvantage us.
Fine. They're working together.
What is the point of having all that power and influence if you just get fucked because of it? If that power and influence is never to your benefit. Yeah, America has all this power and influence, but it's not used to benefit American citizens. It's used to benefit everybody else but American citizens. I mean, if you're an illegal, it benefits you. If you're an Israeli, it benefits you, but it doesn't benefit us. Like, what the fuck? Why did we fight in World War II? Why did we fight these wars? Just to get screwed in the measure, in the end, you know, when everything's weighed and balanced, we're getting screwed. Like,
they're on deals in West Africa, all over the world. And so there's not actually a lot of ambiguity about any of this. No spelling errors, typos, anything like that. This is actually the bulk of the emails. This is the substance of what's actually there. Epstein is working hand in glove with the Israeli state and in particular with the Israeli military. But here's a bigger question. So this is raised in the Times of Israel.
See, that's where all the good news
tweets
is.
About it. He's trying to defend
in
the government of
news.
Israel from its connections to Jeffrey Epstein. One
That's
other
bullshit.
thing that I want to point out about this, because this is actually an important little aside. Whenever you talk about the Jewish issue or the Israel issue, one of the big questions that you hear all the time is, what are we talking about really? When we talk about the Jews, Israel, Zionists, people like to say, is it all Jews or is it just the Zionists? Is it the state of Israel or is it just a faction within the state of Israel? This particular political party or this leader, the current leader and his specific policies as the current prime minister of Israel. And what a lot of people like to say in response to this question is that, well, Jews are not a monolith. And even within the state of Israel, there is so much ideological diversity. You hear this all the time. People say, no, it's not the Jews. They say there is no such thing as the Jews. Why?
Bullshit.
They say because Jews are not monolithic, meaning that not all Jews think the same, believe the same things, have the same convictions.
They kind of do.
People say, what about all those Jews that are against the war in Gaza? What about all those Jews that maybe don't even support the existence of Israel? And then take it a step further. People say,
I wonder,
even Israel.
are there any Jews on the planet who are Holocaust deniers? No. Are there any Jews on the planet that even question anything about the Holocaust? No, not at all. There are a lot of things that Jewish people, in particular, that particular group, and the way they raise their children, the way that, their communities are structured and stuff, there are a lot of things that they are monolithic about, that they do all agree. The Holocaust is one. There's just a lot of stuff that they do agree on, and that it tends to have a liberal kind of tint, their worldview, at the very least, a liberal tint. And I have seen there are right-wing ones. There's one that writes books, and he's in the Heritage Foundation or something like that. But in the end, in the measure, this guy still has these liberal priors, and even conservatives. A lot of, like, my dad's a conservative, but he still thinks that the Middle East attacked us in 9/11 because they're jealous of it. They hate us because of our freedom. Like, I can't believe he still actually believes that bullshit. But he does. And, there are a lot of conservatives that really, they still believe in the liberal worldview. And
isn't monolithic.
Even
because there's a
conservatives
right wing in Israel and a left wing in Israel. People say that the right wing in Israel, the Likud party,
doesn't mean they don't
believes the same
agree
things
on a
that the
lot of
Republican
shit.
Party does. On the other side, people say, well, maybe the right wing in Israel supports the genocide, but there are other Jews that do not. What is interesting about these revelations with Epstein is it reveals how little those distinctions actually matter.
Because we're all
for
Goyim.
example, people like to say, well, for example, George Soros.
Right? They are definitely a monolith when it comes to Goyim. They definitely all use that word, and they all have the exact same definition of that word. And we see it in the Epstein files, what they think, how they think about us.
A Jew, a billionaire. He's a huge supporter of the American far left, the European far left, mass migration, and he also supports the far left in Israel.
I didn't know
and
that.
People like to use this as an example to say there's all this diversity. There is no monolith. It is so heterogeneous. They say, and so the existence of a figure like Soros and a figure like Netanyahu, that just goes to show that when we talk about this issue, it is not really based in reality to talk about the Jews as an entity, or even Israel for that matter as an entity. But what Epstein shows us, even though Epstein was working with the left-wing opponent of Netanyahu, it really doesn't matter. Epstein is working with Netanyahu's nemesis. He's working with Ehud Barak, who Netanyahu is fighting against in 2019, who Netanyahu is trying to associate with the Israeli far left in 2019, and yesterday in 2026. Netanyahu and even the Zionists in America, even the pro-Israel Jews in America that are in Trump world, they like to say, see, Epstein was not an agent of Israel. He was working with the Israeli left. He wasn't a Mossad spy. He wasn't working with the Israeli state or Netanyahu. He was working with Ehud Barak. And it is true that Epstein's point of contact was with this person, with Barak. And yet it is a distinction without a difference, because at the end of the day, Ehud Barak was the head of Israel's military intelligence, not the head of left-wing military intelligence. He was the head of their intelligence community.
Yeah.
He used those connections in Israel, in the United States, but also in other countries to sell Israeli military tech, to infiltrate other governments, other tech companies with Unit 8200 operatives. And he was working with Ehud Barak when Ehud Barak was serving Netanyahu as his defense minister in the latter half of the last decade. So people like to say, well, it's not a monolith. There's a right and left there too. It's not a monolith. They don't all agree. They don't all think the same things. Well, in this case, it's a distinction without any meaningful difference. He was working with the Israeli state, and in particular with their military intelligence in their campaign to infiltrate the world's surveillance states, intelligence agencies, tech industries, and militaries. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, because I want to go even a little bit further on that question in particular. This idea of what are the Jews? Are they a monolith? Are they to blame? Here's another question. So Epstein has this relationship to the Israeli state with Ehud Barak. And if you actually read the emails, what is Epstein doing? Epstein is putting Ehud Barak on to various tech companies. Epstein is making introductions for Ehud Barak. One of the big introductions he makes is to Peter Thiel. Jeffrey Epstein introduces Ehud Barak to Peter Thiel and tries to get Barak to invest in Peter Thiel's company, Palantir.
Of course.
Which is very interesting, because for those that are in the know, what Palantir is an algorithm company. It's a metadata company. Their job is to take tons of data and create algorithms, and lately using artificial intelligence to interpret vast sums of data. And you could say, well, what is the use of this sort of technology? Well, for the first 8 years of its existence, Palantir was working with the CIA. And so Palantir would take all the data that the CIA collects, all the data that the CIA collects on foreign governments and even on U.S. citizens, all the data they collect from people overseas, billionaires, oligarchs, you name it.
Is that what you're doing in here?
It's being fed into Palantir so that they can action the data. And who knows who they're giving that to, if they're giving that to their black sites, their kill squads, their operatives in the field.
Today.
Then they open it up after 2008 to the FBI. And so now the FBI is using Palantir.
Anybody remember that scene from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang? Lollipops, candy, gumdrops.
When they're going to a crime scene and they're investigating, they're going to run the information and the names, license plates through Palantir software. Where else have we seen this license plate? Where else have we seen some of this information?
Bro, I forget who I've seen talking about social credit scores in China, but they were saying that that's what they're trying. They're still trying to do that right now here in America. That there's some, it's like a credit score company that's using AI to set up a different, similar to a credit score, but like, it's not just your credit, it's other stuff like, the stuff you do with your life, the way you drive, the stuff you subscribe to, shit like that. But from what I understand, like potential companies will be looking at it. So you could not get a job because of stuff in your past or whatever. Like this AI gathered score is going to be a social credit score. In other words, that companies are going to look at when they're looking at your application. So it's not your reputation, or as a human would think of it, or as your reputation amongst humans. It's your digital reputation. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that just sounds so fucking scary. Like, it just sounds awful, dude, because I know what discrimination feels like. I know what it feels like to get locked out of polite society as a white man. It's not fun. And I was only locked out of, the upper rungs of the ladder, but to be locked off the ladder completely. Like when I first heard that, it made my heart sink, man. I was like, whoa, that would be awful. Like, and I don't think I had ever thought of it like that. The social credit score being used or being against you when you try to get a job, like, so that you can't earn a living or that you can't feed yourself. Like, that is so dark. I mean, that's truly a scary thought to me.
Trump administration, Palantir software has been introduced to various government departments and agencies, to the Treasury Department, to the Social Security Administration, Health and Human Services. Ostensibly, it was brought in under the aegis of the DOGE cost-cutting program. In order to cut all the waste, fraud, and abuse, we need to take these vast amounts of data about federal expenditures and beneficiaries, and we need to be able to interpret that data. So who do we bring in? Well, we bring in the PayPal mafia. We bring in Palantir. And even though DOGE is over, the Palantir software remains. And so what was Epstein's role? He was introducing Ehud Barak to Peter Thiel. In other words, introducing the head of Israeli military intelligence, who was running a front, sending Israeli intelligence operatives into the United States, into Silicon Valley to infiltrate our defense tech sector. Epstein was introducing this person to our American defense tech scion, Peter Thiel, that created this now all-important company.
How is it that we have citizens that will just sell us out like this, man? That will just straight up sell America out. I mean, and that's what's going on here. Make no mistake. That's what was happening. Epstein is selling us out to Israel, or was selling us out. It's just...
He became one of the top 10 biggest tech companies by market cap. And more on that later. We'll actually unpack that in much greater detail later in the show.
When I saw some guys arguing on Timcast earlier, they were talking about some woman, I think her last name is Gu. Like, seriously, an Olympic athlete named something Gu. And I guess she was raised here in America, but she's a Chinese citizen. Like, she was raised in Southern California, American accent and everything. She's competing for China. Now, to my mind, if somebody has citizenship in China, they should not be allowed to have an American. They should not. You shouldn't be able to have a American citizenship or a passport if you're a citizen of China. Because China doesn't allow dual citizenship. In China, it's a communist country. You have to be a spy whether you like it or not. I mean, if you're here and unless you cut ties completely, yeah, you pretty much have to be a spy. And if you have family there, they'll make you. But how is it that we're allowing people to be citizens of America while they're citizens of China when we know what citizens of China do? And like, look at this woman. She's such a liberal that we have taught her to hate us. Our school system taught this Asian woman to hate America. Like, what the fuck, man? Like, burn that shit down. Just the education system, it needs to go bye-bye, or just clean it out. Because if that's what's happening, it didn't used to be that way. People didn't get to out of college and hate America. And it just blows my mind that because these institutions have been feminized, that's their nom de plume now. That's their end goal, is to turn as many people against America as possible.
First, it's very important to understand, how did Jeffrey Epstein...
But what's crazy, at the same time, they want as many people to come here. Oh, America's so great. All of you need, you need to come here and we'll let you stay. But then they educate those same people to fucking hate our guts. Like, it's as if they're asking those people to come here and destroy this country. Please come here and destroy it. I hate it so much. Come and destroy it for us.
In that
God,
position.
I hate teachers.
Where actually did his money come from? Because as always with these people that sort of appear on the scene and have large amounts of money or political clout or connections, you actually have to question how they arrived. You can't start in the middle of the story where Epstein has an island and a townhouse and is friends with everybody and a billionaire. You have to start at the beginning of the story. How did he get his billions? How did he come into possession of a private island?
Too.
How did he meet all these people? And this answer is actually very simple. Epstein was enriched by two people. For the most part, his vast sums of money, the majority of it came from exactly two clients by the name of Leon Black and Les Wexner, both of them Jewish. First, let's talk about Leon Black. This is a New York Times article about him and his connection to Jeffrey Epstein. And then we'll work through his story and how he got to be rich and how he came to be involved with Epstein. It says, quote, Mr. Epstein had no formal training in tax and estate planning, but after a few years working at an investment bank, he convinced a few business elites to hire him for financial advice. Mr. Black found Mr. Epstein to be impressive and a little mysterious. It wasn't just his ties to the ultra-wealthy. He also seemed to always be surrounded by beautiful women. Leon Black told a publication last year, quote, he was almost like a James Bond villain. In 1997, long before Mr. Epstein became a formal advisor to Mr. Black, he and his wife Deborah put Mr. Epstein on the board of directors of their newly created family foundation. A couple years later, Mr. Black and two other Apollo executives donated $500,000 to one of Epstein's nonprofits. Epstein introduced Mr. Black to several young women. Some of the women later accused Mr. Black of abusing them. In 2002, for example, Mr. Epstein arranged for Mr. Black to meet Sherry Pearson, whom Mr. Epstein had paid for massages, according to a lawsuit that Ms. Pearson filed years later and eventually withdrew. She met Mr. Black in Mr. Epstein's townhouse where Mr. Black raped her in the massage room. Mr. Black denied the claim and said he had never met Ms. Pearson. While Mr. Epstein repeatedly rattled off the projects he said he was undertaking for Mr. Black, the actual role that he played, as well as the true value of his work, is unclear. Yet Mr. Epstein told Mr. Black that the work was highly valuable. Ultimately, Mr. Black coughed up the fees that Mr. Epstein requested.
And he had to give him
the total
power
had
of
reached
attorney.
$170 million in total. By a wide margin, Mr. Black was Mr. Epstein's greatest source
Power
of
of
income
attorney. That's
after
nuts.
2012. The runner-up was the French banker Ariane de Rothschild, who paid Mr. Epstein at least $15 million. So when you think
And think about the Rothschilds for a second. These people are so clever. They amassed a fortune in like the 18th century, so the 1700s, and they have been on top. They have been an apex of Europe first, then the world. They have been a world player since before the Napoleonic Wars. That's insane. That's how clannish those people are. You know, and discerning. They're very discerning with who they allow their people to marry. Yeah, it's a firm. It's not, it's like its own nation. You know, they're very aware, so very conscious of who they allow in. And that's how they've maintained this like this economic dynasty, almost this dynasty of wealth. And it's their European Jewry, and they're still in control. Those people will most likely never lose their wealth because they're not really bound by nations anymore. Like no one nation can take their wealth. Like even if a country, you know, had a revolution and went totally communist, there's no way that they could appropriate the Rothschilds' wealth, not in its entirety. You know, We would have to revolutionize. They probably have most of their money here or in Switzerland, but since the 1700s, these people have been at the top. They've been rubbing elbows with our presidents, with prime ministers of Britain, with the presidents of all nations all over the world, all the nations that are worth mentioning anyway.
These sums of money. After 2012, Leon Black gives him $170 million. The next biggest client is only $15 million.
That's
and
odd.
happens to be a member of the Rothschild family. So you have Leon Black, Jewish financier, head of Apollo Global Management.
And you know, it stands to reason that if this is how the Rothschilds do business today, stands to reason it's how they did business back then. If they're crooked now, probably not a new occurrence. They've probably been crooked from the jump. And I would imagine, I mean, to my mind, that's most likely how they got their wealth and how they kept their wealth. He's probably screwed some nobleman or something out of his money, which I believe that is what happened. I believe they screwed some German nobleman out of a cache of money.
Runner-up
And then
is the
turned,
Rothschilds.
literally shoehorned that into being like a financial wizard or a financial dynasty.
Mr. Epstein also gave Mr. Black access to his Rolodex. Over the years, he connected him with Bill Gates and Stephen Bannon. He introduced one of Mr. Black's sons to Woody Allen to learn about film editing. Mr. Black, meanwhile, donated millions to one of Mr. Epstein's charities. Some work that Mr. Epstein performed for Mr. Black required the utmost discretion.
The
For
Night
instance,
Scotsman
he helped
stud.
him keep a long-running extramarital affair under wraps.
That's funny.
So this is where Epstein gets his money. How did he get rich? How did he become a billionaire? He gets it from ultra-wealthy Jewish financial clients. And think about this relationship. Epstein says that he's a tax genius. This is the cover story.
I
That
would imagine
Epstein
it
is a brilliant
lucrative
financier,
deal.
a math whiz. And he is so intelligent, in particular with math, but also with financial instruments and tax law.
You're right, though. You know, Jewish people, they do seem to have a knack for entertainment. They own Hollywood. And even in vaudeville, prior to Hollywood, howdy. Yeah, even, Grand Designs, what's up? Even in, pre-recording, video recording in vaudeville, which was like, comedy on the stage, slapstick and stand-up comedians. They made up the bulk of vaudeville performers too, I believe. I mean, a lot of them.
And offshore bank accounts. He is worth billions to his clients. And so this is why, allegedly, his handful of clients are giving him hundreds of millions of dollars. But it goes further than that. Epstein is effectively given a blank check. He can ask for these huge sums of money and they cough it up. He's on the board of their foundations. He's handling even their personal affairs. Literally their extramarital affairs, introducing them to their girlfriends. And you got to wonder, so what is real?
How is it that these people trusted Epstein this much? Literally trusted this guy, not with their kids, but like with pretty sensitive stuff. Their money, their personal affairs and shit. I'll tell you how. It's because they're Jewish. It's like their family. They know that that guy isn't going to fuck them over because there's an unspoken bond there. A bond that we don't necessarily see or even have with each other, but they have it. So they're comfortable with giving this guy power of attorney because he may be a double dealing crook, but that's only to the goy, you see. He doesn't break any Jewish laws, as it were, only American laws, and that's acceptable.
Going on here? Well, it's pretty obvious. Jeffrey Epstein is probably not a math genius. He's probably not a financial wizard. He probably isn't an expert on the tax code. What he is a fixer. What he is somebody who introduces people to women and then maybe uses that as blackmail. Or that's just one of the services that he provides. It's hard actually to know where the one begins, where the one ends and the other begins.
It's awful.
He introduces Leon Black to a woman who eventually accuses him of assault and abuse. Epstein also helps Black cover up an extramarital affair. So what is he actually? Is he somebody that's providing women to billionaires as one of his many services? Making introductions, making political problems go away, making tax problems go away, introducing people to the managers of offshore bank accounts. And maybe that is separate from or in the service of also blackmailing them too. If you know the financial crimes that a person is involved in, if you know the sexual crimes that a person is involved in, it also gives you leverage over that person. And unlike a traditional lawyer, you don't necessarily have that confidentiality understanding.
Yeah, or like with a doctor.
If you go to a billionaire like Leon Black or Les Wexner, who we'll talk about in a moment, and you're trying to implement a tax avoidance, you're working your connections with Israel, working your connections with people in the Caribbean, in the United Kingdom, in the Gulf. If you know, so to speak, where the financial bodies are buried, also you know a person's sexual crimes, it gives you considerable leverage, and you can ask for $150 million in payment, even if you're not even necessarily that good at your job or providing great services. Maybe
Crazy.
Jeffrey Epstein is not offering $150 million in value for his tax advice, but it's $150 million in solving other kinds of problems that may even be of his own
They're
creation.
getting $150 million worth of value.
I want to talk a little bit also, though, about Leon Black and his connections, just to give you an idea. So Leon Black's father is a man by the name of Eli Black. His real name is Elihu Blackowitz, spelled Blachowicz. Now, Leon Black, his son, is the head of Apollo Global Management. He's a huge financier. Apollo Management is a big private equity firm.
Hello.
If you were uninitiated, you would look at this guy and say, oh, Leon Black, that's kind of a cool name. You wouldn't even think anything of it, right? Well, the real name, his father was the head of one of these corporate rating conglomerates. He took over the United Fruit Company, which was involved in the Caribbean in the 1970s. He committed suicide in 1975 because he tried to bribe the government of Honduras, and when it was found out, he knew he was going to jail. So he went to the top floor of the Pan Am building, threw his briefcase out the window, and then jumped and committed suicide.
Damn.
That's who these people are.
That's crazy.
That's the father of Leon Black, one of Jeffrey Epstein's, maybe his first or second
That's insane.
biggest clients. Either his first or second biggest benefactor. His father is Eli Blackowitz, literally a criminal, a corporate criminal who is sort of involved in the exact same kinds of activities. Tries to bribe the government of Honduras, gets found out, commits suicide. Who is Leon Black? Well, Leon Black got his start at Apollo Global Management, which is the 29th largest private equity firm right now. He formed Apollo Management in 1990 after he departed another financial firm, which was called Drexel Burnham and Lambert. That company collapsed when its founder, named Michael Milken, was charged for all kinds of violations with the SEC. Fraud, racketeering, insider trading, all kinds of problems. Michael Milken was also a Jew. So go figure. You have Leon Black's father is a Jew from Poland. He tries to bribe the government of Honduras. He commits suicide. Leon Black gets involved with Michael Milken, who's another criminal. They call them the Junk Bond King. and he's basically running a criminal financial enterprise. He's another Jew. He goes down. When that firm explodes, Leon Black starts a new firm, and using the clients from his pre-existing business with this Milken character, he gets $400 million in investments. He founds Apollo Global Management with another Jew named Mark Rowan. Now, what's interesting is that Mark Rowan is a huge supporter of the Trump administration. In the year 2020, the Trump administration pardoned Michael Milken, who had been in prison for the previous 30 years. So think about the layers to this. Leon Black, his father's a Jewish financial criminal. His mentor is a Jewish financial criminal. He uses his connections to these financial criminals to start a huge private equity firm, $400 million in investments off the rip. He starts it with a Jewish business partner. 30 years later, that Jewish business partner gives the Trump campaign $1 million, and Trump pardons Leon Black's mentor. This is how it works. This is the stuff of the Epstein network. But it gets better. Mark Rowan, who again is Leon Black's partner, gets Trump to pardon this guy. He also happens to be on the board of the Gaza Peace Board, which was created in October of last year to create this smart city in the ruins of the Gaza Strip. These are the connections. Now, Leon Black's son, Benjamin, is the head of the Development Finance Corporation in the Trump administration. And this is a piece from an article that he wrote with Joe Lonsdale. It's called How to Doge U.S. Foreign Aid. This is Leon Black's kid, Benjamin. He writes, beyond the absurd mission drift, aid dollars from USAID prop up corruption and even terrorism. In recent years, the U.S. has funneled hundreds of millions of dollars to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, the UNRWA, which was defunded in 2024, only to find its employees and infrastructure implicated in the October 7th terrorist attack on our ally Israel. In Afghanistan, over $3 billion in aid vanished into unaccounted for cash disbursements. In Yemen, most aid either has been seized by or diverted to Houthi loyalists. And before Assad's fall in Syria, donor funds were routinely siphoned off by the Assad regime, with much of the aid stolen by its cronies. So Leon Black's kid is running the Development Finance Corporation, which in collaboration with Joe Lonsdale is calling for the UNRWA, which is the organization that is allocating all the relief money for Palestine, to be defunded. People are talking about cannibalism. They're talking about Baal. They're talking about satanic sex cult rituals. Meanwhile, all of this is happening in plain sight. This is the milieu that Jeffrey Epstein moved in. These are the connections. So to summarize very quickly on Leon Black, because I know this is a lot of information, Jeffrey Epstein's number one benefactor from 2012 by far, and it isn't even close, is Leon Black, head of Apollo Global Management. Leon Black gave Epstein $170 million, most likely was being blackmailed. What Leon Black provided for Epstein was not only huge sums of money, like I said, almost $200 million, but also opened up his Rolodex to Epstein. Introduced him to Bill Gates, introduced him to Steve Bannon, probably tons of other people. And more likely than not, because Epstein introduced Leon Black to his girlfriend, because Epstein was helping Leon Black cover up his tax avoidance scheme, help cover up his extramarital affair, more likely than not, Epstein was getting money from this person through blackmail. Leon Black is deeply entrenched in New York City, in the financial industry, and through his partner, Mark Rowan, and his son, Benjamin Black, inside the Trump administration. His partner, Mark Rowan, is on the Gaza Peace Advisory Board, gave Trump $1 million, got Leon Black's mentor off the hook. And Leon Black's kid is the head of the Development Finance Corporation, which, for those that don't know, that is our version of the Belt and Road Initiative. It coordinates $80 billion a year in private sector investments by the U.S. government. He's working with Joe Lonsdale effectively to cut aid to Palestine. Uncle Mark is on the Gaza Peace Advisory Board, making sure that the Palestinians are deported, making sure that Gaza turns into
playing both sides of scrimmage, or both sides of the ball, offense and defense. They have a man on both sides, so they're going to benefit from no matter which way things fall, which way the chips fall. They benefit no matter what. That is like their skill. Is they make money no matter what happens. They lay off the risk, and they never lose. They never seem to lose. They always come out ahead.
Smart City with Jared Kushner, while the son Benjamin is working with Founders Fund head, Stanford Review head, Palantir founding father Joe Lonsdale, to cut foreign aid to the Houthis, cut foreign aid to the Palestinians, cut foreign aid to the Assad regime, which at the time was allied with Iran. This is what we're talking about. This is the network. Netanyahu's defense minister is Ehud Barak. He has 60 meetings with Epstein in the 2010s.
Right.
While
How can
Epstein
anybody
is getting
deny
money
that
from
shit?
Leon Black, while Leon Black's business partner
It's
is
so
giving
plain
millions
to
to
see
Trump,
now.
while his son is sitting at the head of America's Belt and Road Initiative, controlling $80 billion in U.S. private equity or venture capital, which is being funneled with the help of Peter Thiel's, practically his son-in-law, Joe Lonsdale. This is the real Jeffrey Epstein. But I mentioned before there's two main benefactors. Leon Black is only one of them.
What were you in
The
here
other
last
big
night?
benefactor of Jeffrey Epstein is a man by the name of Les Wexner, who comes from Ohio. And we'll read through. This is a report about Les Wexner's connection to Jeffrey Epstein. Arguably, this one is even more extensive. It says, quote, in 1988, Epstein founded J. Epstein and Company, a consulting firm that provided money management services to individuals with a net worth of more than $1 billion.
Very
His
Rothschild
only
of
major
them.
client for some 20 years was the billionaire retail magnate.
They're not stupid. They realize, apparently, as soon as cameras came out, they were like, oh, gee, we need to get a hold of that. We need to be in charge of that because we can do whatever we want. And the people that will be responsible for alerting humankind or the public will be us. Will be us. So we're home free. Nobody can touch us anymore. So they, started Hollywood or bought it or whatever the hell they did, along with other lucrative, crooked industries or industries that could be corrupted, and made that their bread and butter. And man, they've been sitting, they've set themselves up in the nicest little nest, up above us in their little nest of corruption. It's disgusting.
Leslie H. Wexner, who founded a conglomerate that at various times owned retail companies including Victoria's
And they're
Secret,
still
Bath and
fucking
Body Works, Abercrombie and Fitch, and Lane Bryant.
whittling
Wexner
away at
also
us.
sold Epstein the luxurious Manhattan townhouse, which he used.
The money press.
Epstein had nearly limitless access to Wexner's wealth, serving as his power of attorney, and was able to buy, sell, and borrow in Wexner's name.
The only thing that's changed is the way that they do their crooked dealings. They used to coin clip and steal from a polity that way, steal from a people, a nation, whatever, wherever they were. They would steal from them by whittling down their gold coins, their currency, which is so disgusting. You know, a polity, they have a certain amount of gold, like a village or any sort of state, a city state, anything like that, any sort of a polity, a community of people. They have gold that is traded amongst them. And these fucking parasitic people that are, you know, they just kind of, they're vagabonds. They're constantly moving. They never become sedentary. They come into this community where the gold is being exchanged, and they start whittling down that gold supply. Not by taking anything outright, but by shaving physical gold off of the coins. That is so corrupt and crooked and typical of them. You know, like, they don't have the balls to do it straight up. They do it like that. You know, I mean, that's what coin clipping is. And, you know, the gold that a community has, really, the community has it because everybody has pocket change, or they have spending money, and everybody's spending money combined is their, you know, that's the gold that community has. And these people come in, and they, instead of the gold just being transferred around the community from person to person for different services, different goods, and staying in that community, these fucking leeches come in, and they start whittling it down. They make that community poorer by doing that. And it's not so much that they're poor amongst each other, it's that they're poor when it comes to trading with anyone outside of that community. You know, because they may not even realize their coins are being lightened. You know, the weight of the coin is being lightened until they go to deal with somebody outside of the community. And then they're screwed. Or they're minus shit. You know,
The
they had money
relationship with
subtracted.
Wexner was important in another key way. The fact that the billionaire had hired Epstein to give him an imprimatur of respectability. Epstein's affiliation with Wexner opened doors for the relationships with the rich and powerful that Epstein would cultivate in the 1990s and early 21st century. Ultimately, Wexner and Epstein had a falling out, and Wexner has said that he fired Epstein in 2007. So in the early 1990s, Les Wexner gave Epstein hundreds of millions of dollars, basically gave him access to his checkbook, put him at the head of the Wexner Foundation, gave him power of attorney, sold him the townhouse for $1, gave him a private jet.
I mean, you're right. It isn't so much that it's smart, it's that they're outsiders and they take advantage of everybody who isn't inside their in-group. And that's the thing. That's why they've been thrown out of so many countries, because they don't want to contribute. That's what's so crooked and evil about it, is that they're not even contributing. It would be one thing if they were outsiders that were contributing a service to the community. And that's how the community is getting poorer, because they're paying for a service. No, that's not it at all. They set up shop and do business somewhere. You know, they set up some little shitty pawn shop, or, a used goods shop or whatever. And people come and trade, and maybe they don't even make money off the stuff they're selling. They make money off of stealing from them by coin clipping. And I'm sure they had other ways to make money, you know, other ways to pump up their crooked ways or pump up their purse. No, but that's what they would do, you know, moving from town to town until they get thrown out. And they're not even contributing. It's a subtractive situation. They're just showing up and taking, not contributing, just taking. They don't learn a trade like cobbler or a blacksmith or something like that. And I mean, that's why they deal in certain things. That's why, and they were outlawed from having a trade or learning a trade in parts of Europe, and they were outlawed from owning land in parts of Europe. But it's like a chicken or the egg thing. Were they outlawed from doing that stuff because they were crooked thieves, or were they or were they crooked thieves because they had been outlawed from learning a trade? And honestly, if you ask me, I think it's probably the former more than the latter. They were probably crooked, and those laws came about to keep them moving. Make sure that they didn't settle in any one place or anybody's. Because if I had a polity, I would make a law outlawing them. So, like, you got to keep it moving. You can't stay here. You got to go. Because they would have to they would actually have to be doing business so that they have many coins coming in and out of their possession. And I would make a law. And it's the same thing with gypsies too. There's a reason why people say, "Oh, he gypped me." There's a reason why there's such a bad connotation with gypsies. And they were even more rolling stone. They were more rolling stones than the Jays. The gypsies, they literally lived in caravans, or campers would be what they are in America, but they lived in wooden carts, wagons with the old-timey old Western time wagons with the cover. That kind of a thing. They called them caravans in Europe, but that's also how circuses and stuff would travel, or carnivals. Any group of those, they called them troops, I guess. Acting troops. That's why actors were not allowed in polite society for a long time, because they traveled with these communities that traveled in wagons, gypsies, circus folk. And they all have something in common. They don't stay anywhere. They can't stay anywhere. They have to keep moving because nobody will let them settle in their town. They're thieves, and people don't want them settling. So they just, that's how they make their livelihoods, stealing from town to town, conning people, stealing, flim-flam stuff, selling patent herbal medicines and shit. All these people have, they kind of fall in that same bucket. Con men, crooks, not trustworthy.
Like Leon Black, we have to ask the question, who is Les Wexner? Leon Black was this Jewish financial person who was connected to all sorts of criminals. Father was a criminal. Mentor was a criminal. Business partner is Jewish, connected to Trump. Son is Jewish, connected to Trump. Les Wexner offered maybe the other half of the money. Between Leon Black and Les Wexner, they probably contributed over $500 million, maybe upwards of $700 million to Jeffrey Epstein. Well, here's a little snippet from the Wexner Foundation. I'm just going to read this to you. Zero introduction.
Deadheads. Isn't that
this
a
is from the
military
Wexner
term?
Foundation website. It
Bunch
says,
of
quote,
deadbeats.
close to 150 Wexnerim came together at the height of our...
And you know something? That's what makes them low on the culturally, socially. That's why I would take even an average African. I mean, like an African, like with the low IQ and shit, the sub-Saharans. They're not like they're not like Black Americans. They're considerably dumber. But I would take them over one of these transient community members, because at least the sub-Saharan isn't going to fuck you over. And if he tries to, chances are he's going to get caught. Whereas these other groups, they're the equivalent of pickpockets. Like if a town or a community was like a person, they would be the equivalent of a pickpocket. This group of parasitic flies almost that just hover around a pile of shit kind of thing. I mean, that's what they are. And they travel in groups to, because there are strength in numbers. That's how gypsies were. You didn't get just one gypsy. They came in a swarm, like locusts. That's what I was trying to think of when I said flies. Locusts, like locusts. They show up. They eat you out of house, hearth, and home, which is insane to think of that. But yeah, locusts, it's like a cloud of it's like a cloud of blight. It just comes in on the wind, floats in, and then eats your entire income for the foreseeable future. Like that, it would suck to be a farmer because there's so many things that can go wrong. It's basically gambling. But like to think of that locusts, you see them fly in on the wind, on the breeze, and there's nothing you can do. You just watch these fuckers eat everything you own, basically. I mean, the bulk of it, that's most of your money is out in the field. But that's how those people were, a plague of locusts, that traveling plague of locusts.
Gathering last Sunday night during the AIPAC Policy Conference in Washington, D.C. A good time was had by all as people across all of our programs networked and were prompted to share an impactful takeaway from their day with someone they didn't know. During the conference, our fellows, members, and alumni could be seen everywhere as experts leading sessions, as professionals within AIPAC, as heads of Hillels and synagogues bringing their activists, and as captains of lobbying teams going up to the Hill. During a conference that brings together 18,000 people, it was a joy to see so many familiar faces and to see the commitment, strategy, and love for Israel and evidence from so many from our Wexner network. This is the Wexner Foundation that Jeffrey Epstein was on the board of. What is the Wexner Foundation? Les Wexner forms up a nonprofit, and they have a few different programs, the Wexner Graduate Fellowship, the Senior Leaders Program. What the Wexner Foundation basically does is they go to Jewish fraternities, the Jewish Hillel Society on college campuses. They go into businesses, and they look for up-and-coming Jewish leaders. And the Wexner Foundation sends them to Israel. Gets them together at conferences, for example, at AIPAC's annual summit. And these people are effectively groomed, given networking opportunities, mentorship, so that they can rise through the ranks of upper society. This is the foundation that Jeffrey Epstein is involved in. This is Les Wexner's foundation. It's basically, we talk about what we're trying to do with the Groypers. We're trying to get people involved, infiltrate the institutions, long march through the institutions. Les Wexner has been funding these types of activities for 30 years. And all you have to do is go on their website. They're talking about bringing together the giant Les Wexner network, which consists of college graduates, members of the Hillel Society, business leaders, and they're all coming together and meeting at AIPAC.
Hogs are the same thing. They travel in packs, and they can root up a whole field, destroy an entire crop. They're the same way, just an evil plague of animals.
But it gets even better than that. Les Wexner also founded a group 30 years ago, which you might have heard before. I've talked about it on the show, I think last year when I did my expose on Jeffrey Epstein, called the Study Group. The Study Group was created in the 1990s. It's a loose confederation of Jewish billionaires, It's called the study group. Other times it's called the mega group. And basically the purpose of it is to advance the cause of Israel and public diplomacy for Israel in the United States. This is a little blurb about it. It says, quote, in 1991, Les Wexner co-founded a philanthropic organization of Jewish billionaires known as the Mega Group, which uses some of its vast resources to shape Middle East policy. In 2003, Wexner's Foundation commissioned GOP messaging guru Frank Luntz to advise American Jewish leaders on how to rally support for Israel. Luntz's recommendation stated, quote, for a year, a solid year, you should be invoking the name of Saddam Hussein and how Israel was always behind American efforts to rid the world of this ruthless dictator and liberate their people. So Les Wexner brings together all the Jewish billionaires, and they put money behind Birthright Israel. They put money behind Frank Luntz, who's a marketing analyst. He also created the phrase most moral army, did a lot of the marketing research on the 2014 war in Gaza, but also all the way back to 2003, promoting the war in Iraq and talking up the Jewish and pro-Israel involvement in the drive to the war in Iraq. Frank Luntz also happens to be the former roommate of Kevin McCarthy, who was the Speaker of the House from 2022 until 2023. So Les Wexner brings this group together. Another member of the mega group is Ronald Lauder. Ronald Lauder is another Jewish billionaire. He's the heir to the Estee Lauder fortune.
Victoria's Secret,
You might remember that Ronald Lauder was one of the billionaires that got the University of Pennsylvania president fired because she tolerated a pro-Palestine protest on her campus.
Take their place.
Ronald Lauder is the current head of the World Jewish Congress. Ronald Lauder is also a close ally of the Trump administration. And we'll get into some of his Trump admin ties. But he also happened to be deeply involved with Jeffrey Epstein himself.
Oh, I cannot believe that what is it? Isn't it NatCon or one of those conventions is being held in Jerusalem this year? What the fuck? Bro, this is bullshit.
Latest article about him, about some of the revelations from the files that came out last week. It says, quote, Ronald Lauder, a powerful art collector who has patronized institutions such as the Museum of Modern Art, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Getty Trust, and the World Monuments Funds, appears more than 900 times in the set of Jeffrey Epstein-related files that were released by the DOJ at the end of January. Lauder, the heir to the Estee Lauder Company, appears to have met with Epstein multiple times in 2017. While there's no direct communication between Lauder and Epstein, their respective assistants emailed frequently to discuss the arrangement of meals and phone calls for them. Epstein and Lauder were often looped into those email chains. How many times the two met, or even if they ended up meeting at all, remains unclear from the emails, which suggests that Lauder's schedule forced his assistant to frequently change their appointments. But Gmail calendar reminders for Epstein implied that the two did at least get some meetings on the books. What they discussed also remains unclear, with just one email offering a vague hint. In a 2017 message from Epstein's assistant to Lauder's, Epstein's assistant mentions that Epstein is seeking a conversation to offer best guidance. Epstein's assistant mentions that he wants to see 2 years of tax returns by Lauder, as well as his will. The cosmetics magnate's assistant writes, quote, I have given Mr. Lauder your message. Other documents show that Epstein may have played a role in Lauder's art-related dealings with Leon Black, another major art collector with whom Epstein worked closely. In 2014, a representative for Black emailed Epstein an agreement guiding a loan agreement for a Kurt Schwitter's work. It said Leon and Ronald Lauder decided Ronald will have the first possession, period, said the email. For those that don't know, Ronald Lauder donated $5 million to Trump's super PAC in 2025. And this has also been in the news recently. Ronald Lauder's son-in-law is a man by the name of Kevin Warsh. He was just nominated to be the chair of the Federal Reserve of the United States of America. Okay? So to recap on Les Wexner is Jeffrey Epstein's other benefactor. He really got him his start. Les Wexner opened up his checkbook, gave him the New York townhouse, probably gave him $300 million, $400 million. Les Wexner, being Epstein's client, gave him legitimacy. It allowed Epstein to go and make introductions. He had access to Les Wexner's Rolodex, gave him credibility in the industry. Les Wexner's foundation is creating a network of Jews that are going to AIPAC, taking birthright trips to Israel. His foundation sponsored pro-Iraq war propaganda, which was specifically ideologically Zionist. Les Wexner also founded the Mega Group, which is a pro-Israel group of billionaires. One of the members is Ronald Lauder, who also dealt with Epstein. Lauder is the chair of the World Jewish Congress, gave $5 million to Trump's super PAC, and his son-in-law is Trump's nominee to be the chair of the Federal Reserve. This is where Epstein came from. This is how Epstein made his money. People say, how did Epstein get so rich? Where did Epstein come from? This is the real Epstein. Given hundreds of millions by Leon Black and Les Wexner, that's how he made all of his connections, and then, of course, leveraged these connections off of each other. By meeting Les Wexner, he was able to meet a bunch of other people. By meeting a bunch of other people, he was able to leverage those connections to his clients. By having access to the Victoria's Secret modeling agency, he's able to groom girls. And that's another point of access. And all these people that he's leveraging one after the other, well, they all have one thing in common. They're all Jewish. And whether they support the Israeli left or the Israeli right, they're all pro-Israel. From the year 2000 until the year 2025, they're supporting Israel. In 2003, the Wexner Foundation and the Mega Group are pushing the war in Iraq. But also, as late as 2025, Joe Lonsdale, the Jewish head of Peter Thiel's Founders Fund, and Ben Black, Leon Black's son, are writing an op-ed about how they're going to use Trump's Development Finance Corporation to take money away from USAID so it doesn't fall into the hands of the UNRWA, which is supporting Palestine and humanitarian relief in Yemen, because it falls into the hands of the Houthi rebels. Okay, that's the connection. That's the big story. There's another connection, however, because when we talk about Epstein and the scam that he's running, where he says that he's this financial wizard, and that's why he's able to charge his clients hundreds of millions of dollars, which, by the way, is totally out of the ordinary. You might think that it's all relative, it's all proportionate, that if you're a billionaire, you can afford to pay $100 million a year for tax advice or estate planning, this sort of thing. That is so out of the ordinary. Even some of the biggest accounting firms don't make that kind of money. And so what that would suggest is that Epstein either isn't really a money manager or he's something more than a money manager. If you're being paid 2, 3, 5, 10 times more money to do taxes for a billionaire than some of the highest and most elite accounting firms, there's a reason you're paying the premium. And you're paying that premium either because you're doing something criminal or you're paying that premium because Epstein has leverage over you. But those are really the only two reasons. And those reasons are deeply related. Because, of course, if Epstein is doing something criminal in nature or political, which is criminal, if Epstein is helping you set up a tax avoidance scheme, if he's doing something that allows you to cook the books in some way, well, that's why you pay him more money. It also happens to be the case that if he goes away unhappy, well, he knows where the bodies are buried. So you're also paying him to be happy. You're also paying him, as Leon Black did, even if you're frustrated with him, even if you think he's charging you too much, because he knows about all your business. But where did that myth that Epstein is a genius come from? Because it's actually interesting. You have the story that Epstein was able to get all this money because he's a charmer. He's a charismatic guy, really intelligent. And if he's such a tax genius, if he's such a tax wizard, what would be the basis of that skill? Legitimate question. Fundamentally, what is the skill that makes you a finance wizard, a tax wizard?
Math.
It's a mathematical ability. So where did this idea come from that he had this incredible mathematical ability? Well, we can go back even further. Forget for a second about Leon Black and Les Wexner and Ronald Lauder, who all dealt with Epstein for the past 30 years. You can go back 50 years. Because where Epstein got his start was as a math and science teacher at the Dalton School, a very prestigious private school for the elites. And this is known, but there's a little lesser known fact about this. Jeffrey Epstein was hired at the Dalton School in the 1970s by a man named Donald Barr. Donald Barr, for those that don't know, is the father of Bill Barr. Bill Barr was Trump's attorney general in his first term. And specifically, Bill Barr was the attorney general, the head of the Department of Justice in 2019 when Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. So that's how you might know that name. Bill Barr is the son of Donald Barr. Donald Barr was the headmaster of the Dalton School when Jeffrey Epstein was hired there as a math teacher. Well, did you know, not only was Donald Barr a member of the OSS, a precursor to the CIA, but he was also born Jewish? See, I had no idea, because this is a Catholic family. Donald Barr eventually converted to Catholicism, but I didn't even know Donald Barr was actually born into a Jewish family. So go figure. Jeff Epstein gets his start at an elite private school, more on that in a moment, as a math and science teacher. He's hired by a Jewish former OSS operative, even though he had no prior experience. He's not a teacher. He doesn't have a great degree. In other words, he's not qualified for the job. And yet anyway, he's hired at the school. Well, why does this matter?
That's crazy.
Because the first job that Jeffrey Epstein got, he got because he tutored the children of somebody who worked at Bear Stearns. And so Alan Greenberg, who was a very high-level executive at Bear Stearns, his children went to this school. Jeffrey Epstein was their math teacher and tutored them privately, and it was through that connection to Greenberg that Epstein was able to get into Bear Stearns.
That's crazy.
And from Bear Stearns, he was able to pitch himself to Les Wexner as some kind of financial analyst. Do you see how this stuff is established? And what you find when you go back to the beginning of the story, once you work through all these connections, is that Jeffrey Epstein is a creation of Jewish higher society in education, in finance, in government, even arguably in the arts, in culture. At the Dalton School, which is a school for the elites, this is where all the rich people's children go to study. So if you're a billionaire, if you work at Bear Stearns, if you work at Goldman Sachs, if you're a senator from New York, your kids are going to go to a school like this. And the superintendent of that school controls the faculty. The faculty interface with the children of the elites. That's a connection. And you can see how Epstein got in the middle of that and leveraged one thing into the next. Who knows how he got that job through Donald Barr? Probably Jeffrey Epstein was involved in some way in intelligence from the beginning. And he was planted there by Donald Barr. Planted there at that school to make that connection. Hey, Greenberg, nice to meet you. Wow, you got some great kids here. Say, I'm Jeffrey Epstein. And who knows what happened there? Somehow he finds himself at Bear Stearns. Now you're in. Now he's a financial wizard, probably using help from his intelligence connections. Or who knows exactly what's going on there. But then he begins to pitch himself to clients. He starts his own firm. Now he's friends with Les Wexner. Oh, this is a great guy. Jeff Epstein's my best friend, such and such. And Les Wexner introduces him to all of his clients and furnishes him with a house and a plane and hundreds of millions of dollars and a position on a foundation. Now you're a financier. Now you're a socialite. Now you're at the table.
It really pays to be a part of that
Leverages
sect.
that into a relationship with Leon Black.
Be a part of
and the rest of
that
them.
class of human.
And now you're everywhere. Now you're doing arms deals and surveillance deals with Ehud Barak and Unit 8200.
They need that, though, to
now
make
you're
up
doing
for their
art deals with Ronald
crookedness.
Lauder and Leon Black and the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Now you're doing deals with Peter Thiel. Now you're doing deals with film producers. Leon Black's kid, Ben, wants to learn how to make movies. He introduces him to Woody Allen because who are the film producers behind Woody Allen? Jewish Hollywood producers.
That's what Woody Allen is.
It's all connected like this.
He's not
And so this is the real.
He's Jewish
it's
too.
actually, in a way, mundane. It's actually more mundane than you might think. But this is the real Jeffrey Epstein. He's not a satanic pedophile occultist.
He's just a Jew.
To the extent that that's happening, in my opinion, that is perhaps a novelty, a curiosity of the elites. And, you know, maybe that exists on some level. I'm not necessarily denying it outright. I'm just saying that is not necessarily supported. And to the extent that it is real, it seems to be peripheral. And some people might find that shocking. I don't actually believe most of the people involved in this are actually true religious occultists. What is really going on here is that this is a financial network. It is a Jewish political intelligence financial network. And you can see that every step of the way. From Donald Barr to Alan Greenberg at Bear Stearns, to Les Wexner and his mega group and his foundation, to Leon Black at Apollo and all of his pedigree, his mentor, his dad, his business partner, his kid, all the way through to the connections that were made in the 2000s, in the 2010s. Every other part of the story that we know. That's the real story. I also want to talk about Epstein's connection to Peter Thiel. This is something else that was revealed in the emails, and I'll tell you why this is so interesting. So one of the other big developments that we heard from the files is that Epstein actually had a big relationship with Peter Thiel. And this is a story from the New York Times. We'll read through it, and then we'll talk about the significance. It says, quote, by 2014, Mr. Epstein took an interest in Palantir, and at one point suggested to Ehud Barak, former Israeli prime minister, that he speak with Mr. Thiel about an advisory role at Palantir. Mr. Epstein was scheduled to meet with Mr. Thiel several times in 2014, and by that year had started emailing the venture capitalist for investment advice. That October, he asked Mr. Thiel if Palantir was doing a round of financing before asking Mr. Thiel whether he should invest $100 million in Spotify. In response, Thiel emailed him to hold off on investing in Spotify. He said, somewhat more bullish on Palantir, but I don't think there's a rush. Epstein did ultimately invest $40 million in one of Mr. Thiel's venture capital firms, Valar Ventures, across two separate transactions. Mr. Epstein's estate still possesses these holdings, which were worth about $170 million as of last summer. So Peter Thiel was involved with Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein tried to get Ehud Barak a board position at Palantir, which is deeply disturbing because, like we talked about, Palantir is involved in many government departments and agencies since Trump got into office in a second term. Trump has a close relationship with Peter Thiel, and Palantir and the other suite of Thiel companies has become very important to the Department of Defense and the National Security Council. Epstein was trying to get Ehud Barak past the goalie, trying to get him involved in America's defense tech sector, and Thiel was going to be the nexus for that. Epstein did invest $40 million with Thiel. Thiel has that money. Thiel invested that money. It's now worth $170 million. So he is financially connected to Epstein. Now, what is Peter Thiel's real connection to the Trump administration? It's not actually, strictly speaking, the $1 million that Thiel gave him in 2016, or that Thiel funded primary opponents against the Republicans that voted to impeach Trump in 2021. The real connection is through, of course, J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance, the current vice president, owes his entire life to Peter Thiel. It was Peter Thiel that got J.D. Vance his first job in Silicon Valley, then got him his first job in venture capital, then hired him at his venture capital firm, then funded J.D. Vance's venture capital firm.
That's why we can't trust
When J.D. Vance
Vance
wanted to run for Senate, Peter Thiel gave him $15 million and secured the Trump endorsement for him. In 2024, it was Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, and Tucker Carlson that pleaded with Donald Trump to make J.D. Vance his vice presidential nominee. So J.D. Vance, who currently is a heartbeat away from the presidency, is clearly indebted to Peter Thiel, and they have a very close relationship. Peter Thiel has a financial interest, let's say, in J.D. Vance, and vice versa. And Thiel is involved with Epstein. Now, there's another layer to this that people are actually missing, because people think that it begins and ends there. People think that Epstein invested money with Thiel. Epstein tried to introduce Ehud Barak to Thiel. Thiel invested in Vance. Vance is the VP. This is the connection. But it goes deeper than this, because there's a lot of other things that are going on there. For example, where did J.D. Vance get elected senator? This is actually really important. These are the details people tend to miss. He wasn't elected the senator from Florida or New York or Texas. Vance was elected senator from Ohio. Okay? Vance was elected senator from the state of Ohio. He moved back to Ohio in order to run for that seat. He comes from Ohio. Who else is running in the state of Ohio right now? Vivek Ramaswamy. Vivek Ramaswamy was a Yale Law School classmate of J.D. Vance. Some say that J.D. Vance's son is named after Vivek Ramaswamy because of that relationship. And currently, Vivek is running for governor in Ohio. How is Vivek able to run for governor there? Because the lieutenant governor of Ohio, who would run in 2026, because his current governor's term limited, he was appointed to fill J.D. Vance's Senate seat. So Vance is elected to the Ohio Senate seat in 22 with the help of Peter Thiel. Vance leaves that seat in 2024. Who fills the seat? Well, they arrange in the Republican Party for the lieutenant governor to take the seat so that the governor's race in 2026 is wide open. That allows Vivek Ramaswamy to run, and that is going to be supported by J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance's team is going to be helping Vivek Ramaswamy's governor campaign. I imagine that entire Little Tech network is supporting him, all the usual suspects. And who is going to open up a factory in Ohio? Well, Palmer Luckey's Anduril. Palmer Luckey's Anduril is a drone manufacturer. Palmer Luckey was rescued by Peter Thiel when he was fired from Facebook. Peter Thiel gave him a second chance. And actually, when Peter Thiel invested in Anduril, that investment was handled by J.D. Vance when he was working for Peter Thiel. You see how this works? So Thiel created Palmer Luckey. Thiel created Vance. Thiel makes Vance the senator. Vance takes the competitor out of the race. That lets Vivek run. And then when Vivek controls the state, then they're going to build the drone company that was funded by Thiel through Vance working at that venture capital firm. In other words, they got roots in Ohio.
And don't
well, guess who else is from the state of Ohio, aside from J.D. Vance, Vivek Ramaswamy,
is that supposed
and soon to be Palmer Luckey? Who else is operating in Ohio? Well, I actually mentioned it earlier. It's Les Wexner. For those that are not deeply involved in politics, you might not know this, But Les Wexner practically runs the state of Ohio. He's got a net worth of almost $10 billion, and he and his wife and his foundation are huge political benefactors in that state. And it is said that you simply cannot run and win without his help. And it is not confirmed, but it has been rumored for many years. This is not a fact. This is a rumor that Les Wexner and his wife hosted a fundraiser for J.D. Vance at their home for his Senate run in 2022. What is confirmed is that Les Wexner and his wife made a multi-million-dollar contribution to an Ohio-based political PAC called With Honor that J.D. Vance was on the board of in 2019. And so this is going to be the question that needs to be asked in 2028. Did J.D. Vance have any dealings with Les Wexner?
Yeah,
and what is his current relationship with Peter Thiel? Because
little
common sense would dictate
rich, influential Jays. It's disgusting. I wonder, I mean, who knows what the hell these people are doing? But you know, that's the common denominator is the religion.
that J.D. Vance did not get that Senate seat without a go-ahead, without a green light, without at least the tacit approval. It is true that there was no direct contribution from Les Wexner and his wife to Vance. There is no super PAC contribution, but it has been rumored that that did come together. There was a fundraiser, and almost certainly they're running in the same circles, being from the same state. And that's not a coincidence as J.D. Vance approaches 2028 and tries to run for office. And so when you take a look at that entire picture, I'm painting a picture for you that goes all the way back to 1976 through to 2028 with the ascendancy of J.D. Vance. And what you find actually exists in these emails, what there is evidence for, what can be corroborated over and over again, and this is sourced thoroughly from financial reports, from testimony, from the actual emails that were released last week. When you paint the picture of Jeffrey Epstein's life, you see a Jewish fixer. You see a Jewish fixer that was born in America, but that dealt with every country, that dealt with the Rothschilds in continental Europe, that dealt with the British, that dealt with Ehud Barak in Israel, that dealt with the Americans, that dealt with the right and the left, that dealt with people like Ronald Lauder and people like Leon Black connected to Mark Rowan, who are supporters of Trump, but also connected to Bill Clinton, also connected to others that were boosters for the Democratic Party. Jeffrey Epstein, leveraging his connections as an in-betweener that existed in between all these spaces, had connections to the arts. Because who finances the major art museums? Jewish billionaires. Who finances the Hollywood movies? Jewish billionaires. He had connections to finance and banks, because who runs the major private equity firms, venture firms? Who runs the actual banks? Jewish billionaires. He had connections to governments, because who runs politics? Jewish billionaire donors. Jewish lawyers like Alan Dershowitz, other Jewish fixers that exist in between.
Dershowitz. Such
this
a
is
scumbag.
the real story of Jeffrey Epstein. When you
know what? Something that really annoys me about those people. I don't know. I used to watch Alan Dershowitz, his show, and by the way, he has like a really fat, like pasty. Just every time I've seen the guy, it looks like he just pulled his hand out of a bag of Cheetos. His son, fat, pasty, freckly, stupid-looking son of a bitch. I guess he makes his videos or he edits them. But one time, his son, it showed him for like 2 minutes on accident, and I was just like, whoa. It just looked like somebody lifted a house off of its foundation in the basement underneath to reveal this like night animal, this nocturnal, like he like glowed. He was so pale. But that dude is such a scumbag. But, you know, he's been like, he used to be on William Buckley's show, Bill Buckley's Firing Line. He was on it like 15 times. And I fucking hate that guy's, the way that he talks and the inflection and the affect, that Jewish affect that he uses. It's so disgusting. And when he wants to like put emphasis on a word, he does this. Like this is a crazy guy. Like that's what he does when he wants to put emphasis on something. You know, like if he was talking about Trump and, you know, wanted to, you know, it's like an impression he does almost, or instead of doing air quotes, he'll do this weird thing with his voice and get all up close to the camera. It just drives me nuts. And it's a Jewish thing. It's not just him. It's an affect that they all have. And it's like, Seinfeld is like a watered down version of that. But when you get it like full hop, you know, at its most concentrated, dude, it's enough to make you throw up in your mouth, man. It just, you know, it's like somebody putting a pickaxe in your ear, dude. Like, just shut the fuck up, man. And the guy, he just doesn't, he seems to live forever. You know, he's never going to die, it seems like. And they're always talking from this place of authority, as if they've lived for 1,000 years or something, you know, and you're just an idiot. You know, that's how they talk to us. At least that's how it seems to me, you know, and maybe it's because the guy was a Harvard professor or whatever. So he just naturally talks to human beings as if they're in his inferiors. You know, they're his subordinates somehow. That's how they all seem to interact with people.
Shed a light on these 3 million emails that came out of the DOJ. What you don't find actually is any smoking gun about ritual satanic abuse. Sorry, you might suspect that. You might have a hunch, and you might even be right. I don't think it's crazy, actually,
that goes hard. Dershowitz.
To think that might be going on. But what you do not have in the files, what is not in the files,
such a nasty,
is any smoking gun about that.
Redheaded,
there's actually no concrete evidence. What people have at this point in time are photos of Epstein with children that are his goddaughter.
He's like a clown.
Family friends. It's certainly nothing
like a circus clown
that's actually explicit. What you find are a handful of emails like, I like the torture video. Concerning, but ambiguous, vague by definition. Right. So what is not in the files is anything smoking gun about all of that. The most extraordinary maximalist claims about pedophile islands and satanic pedos and occult cabals, it just isn't in there. If it was, I'd be covering it on the show. If it was, we'd be talking about it. We'd be investigating. It's just not there. Millions and millions and millions of documents.
And emails, I used to listen to Megyn Kelly.
Pictures.
I don't even know how could I endure that? How can I endure listening to her for over an hour, like every night? I can't stand 60 seconds of that woman today. Not even. I won't watch the clips, and YouTube doesn't even throw it at me anymore. I just can't take it. That kind of goes. It's like it kind of goes all around, except for Nick. Some of people I can watch here and there, but those are like Napolitano. I can do a little bit, but Nick is really the only one that I can like watch every day. I can be a regular of. Just the rest drive me nuts.
Videos, tons of stuff. It's not there. The evidence isn't there, and it's not corroborated. What is there are hundreds and hundreds of emails with Ronald Lauder, Leon Black, Ehud Barak, Les Wexner. What is there is what is transparent and obvious, which is that our society is clearly leveraged and manipulated and influenced by elite Jews in every sector of society, but primarily and at the top, the richest Jews. The Jewish billionaires that control the most important financial firms, and it seems that everything proceeds from their influence. Their money, which flows into the elite universities, the private schools, the Ivy Leagues, their money, which flows into the Hollywood studios and gives them cultural cachet and clout and influence. Their money, which flows into the art museums, which serves as a form of money laundering. Their money, which flows into and controls modeling agencies, which, coupled with the influence in Hollywood, provides opportunities to attractive women who can then be leveraged in themselves for further connections and influence as prostitutes. Their money, which flows into politics in the form of political donations to campaigns, which buys influence, not just in Congress, but also in the regulatory agencies, and for which there is a great deal of arbitrage. That influence in one country can actually give you leeway in another jurisdiction. Having influence in one country or influence in a nation where you can start an offshore bank account can be leveraged in a third country. And it all proceeds down from Jewish billionaires working together and deploying their capital in a strategic way. Yes, there are people that are richer. Yes, there are people that are richer than Leon Black and Les Wexner, but they are not working together, mobilizing and using and deploying their capital, using their resources for these political purposes.
Else.
You don't actually need $400 billion. You need the right person in the right place.
Yep.
Few $100 million here and there, buying a prostitute, buying a New York City townhouse, buying an island, a donation to a university, a donation to an art museum, buying a film, having access to an actor. It is the way in which they use these things. It is the organized way, the organized manner in which Jews act as a collective, which is the source of their power. And it is always to advance Jewish interests. That is what Jeffrey Epstein represents from start to finish. He's connecting Ehud Barak to Palantir. Why? Ehud Barak is the head of Israeli military intelligence. If he has a seat on the board of Palantir, and Palantir's Gotham software is at our Social Security Administration, Treasury Department, CIA, FBI, NSA, NIH, well, we have a world of problems, don't we? And if Jeffrey Epstein is working with Ronald Lauder and working with Leon Black and working with Les Wexner, all these billionaires are supporting the war in Iraq. They're infiltrating the Trump administration to cut aid to Palestine. They're on the board of the Gaza Advisory Peace Board. Going all the way back to 1990, everywhere you see Epstein, you see a Jewish billionaire. And everywhere you see one of those Jewish billionaires, you see millions of dollars pouring into grooming Jewish leaders, advocacy for the state of Israel, and political lobbying in the U.S. government. That is the real story of Jeffrey Epstein. And that's the part that I don't see a lot of people covering.
That's
and
the
I almost
bad
start
part.
to wonder
That's what's
if that
fucking
is
crazy.
a layered conspiracy in and of itself. Because I
How
watched
is it
Ian
that everybody's focusing on everything but the worst part of it? The part where he fucks us. Like,
and why are they talking about hot dogs? I don't know. It's coded language.
yeah, nobody
But
knows.
all of that seems like a giant diversion from what is staring us in the face. 60 Minutes about Seth Rich, Julian Assange, Pizzagate, which happened, by the way, 8 years ago. Pizzagate has been out there. Those WikiLeaks emails, they have been out there. They've been scrutinized. And I'm not saying we got to the bottom of it, but it's not like that's new information. This stuff about Jeffrey Epstein, this is actually there. It's not coded. It's not ambiguous. It is staring you in the face. And what it is this is the essence of organized Jewry working in America, working in society.
This is like a peek behind the scenes.
It is transnational.
Wizard of Oz.
It's not necessarily
type
monolithic, but it is directed. It is focused in one direction. And there is a sense of camaraderie among them.
Oh,
there is
what
a
the
sense
fuck?
of identity and insularity. They talk about the outsiders as Goyim.
How in the fuck?
Goyim in abundance. I can't believe that there's all these Goyim. Goyim don't know how to make money.
That shit just keeps fucking.
That's the essence of what's going on here. And that's the part that no one wants to say out loud. Tucker says it's got nothing to do with Jews. Nothing at all. It's about the state of Israel. And it's about the particular government in
fucking
Israel.
crazy.
No, it's not. Whether it's Ehud Barak or
did I just
Netanyahu,
get?
they're part of the same thing.
I don't know if I just
And
got
whether
cut
it's
off
Ronald
or
Lauder
not.
or George Soros, they are in effect part of the same thing. And that thing is called world Jewry, organized Jewry. Yes, it is the Jews. No, they are not Jews. No, they are not pagan gypsies. They are not Khazarians. They are not Frankists. They are not neocons.
I don't know what the fuck just happened.
They're
there,
not just Zionists.
But
It is organized Jewry.
connection
That
just
is what created Jeffrey
a shit
Epstein.
for a little
That
bit
is what
again.
sustained Jeffrey Epstein. And that
time.
is who Jeffrey Epstein worked on behalf of. That is the story. And that's the part I don't see anybody talking about. So people have been asking me all week, you're defending him, you're covering it up. Why are you trying to refute these allegations? Because I truly believe this is a limited hangout. This is a layered conspiracy. Something did happen here. This is a revelation about how power works in America.
yeah. for
And
sure.
rather than look at what is staring you in the face, something
they're
far
focusing
more
on children.
spectacular and sensational is being dangled in front of
Perpetrated.
you to distract you. And so everyone is using the words satanic pedophile, and no one is using the word Jewish fixer. Everyone is using those words,
Bullshit.
pedophile elites. No one is using the words Jewish billionaires. And that's what it is. What unites them together is not their love of pedophilia or their worship of Satan. What unites them is their Jewish identity. That is why when they email each other, they talk about Goyim in a pejorative way.
Yep.
That is why they have these deep connections to the Israeli security state.
Unclean mass.
That is why, down
The
to a
unclean
man, they are
masses.
participating in the pro-Israel cause politically. That's what's going on here.
Bastards.
So that's
Bunch
the
of
truth
crooks.
about Jeffrey Epstein. Once you put it together, it's unignorable and unavoidable
Scumbagels.
that that's what he represents. So that's our show about Jeffrey Epstein. That's our expose. That is what is new in the files. Okay, so he's connected to Lauder. Think about the degrees of separation, even in this Trump administration. The head of the Development Finance Corporation is Leon Black's kid.
That's bullshit.
So Jeffrey Epstein's number 2 benefactor, his son, is heading up the Development Finance Corporation. Do you know how insane that is?
It's fucking crazy.
Jeffrey Epstein, the mastermind, the monster, his number 2 benefactor that gave him maybe upwards of $300 million altogether.
Basically
his
gave him his
son
start.
is running the Development Finance Corporation, which is our version of Belt and Road.
Jesus.
So we're giving money away under the auspices that it's a private sector investment. Development Finance Corporation, that's like foreign aid, but investing in private entities. Do you know who else is on the board of the Development Finance Corporation? Marco Rubio, the neocon who receives patronage from Miriam Adelson. Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, who is also a close personal friend of Jeffrey Epstein. So the head of the DFC, the Commerce Secretary, who is also on the board of the DFC, both 1 degree of separation from Jeff Epstein. Benjamin Black, who's the head of the DFC, writes an op-ed with Joe Lonsdale about how they're going to use the DFC. Joe Lonsdale co-founded the University of Austin, Texas with Barry Weiss. Joe Lonsdale's an investor in Barry Weiss, who became the head of CBS under Larry Ellison through Larry Ellison's connections to Trump. Okay? And Lonsdale is also the head of the Founders Fund, which is created by Peter Thiel. Lonsdale is also a founding father of Palantir, which is created by Peter Thiel, who is also connected to Jeffrey Epstein, who Jeffrey Epstein invested $40 million into. The nominee for the chairman of the Federal Reserve is the son-in-law of Ronald Lauder, who Jeffrey Epstein laundered money for by purchasing art with Leon Black, who is, again, Jeffrey Epstein's number 2 benefactor. Epstein's coordinating art purchases with Ronald Lauder, a Trump ally, again, father-in-law of Trump's Federal Reserve nominee, who has given Trump millions of dollars over the years to his campaign and super PAC.
This is Trump's
and
nominee.
And who's also doing art deals with Leon Black, negotiated by Epstein. Ronald Lauder happens to be the chair of the World Jewish Congress and the World Economic Forum. He succeeded Edgar Bronfman Sr., who he and Ronald Lauder and Les Wexner all formed the mega group 30 years ago to push war in Iraq with Frank Luntz, roommate to Kevin McCarthy. Okay? It goes around and around and around and around. J.D. Vance, who runs for Senate, getting money from Peter Thiel, Jeff Epstein acolyte, to have had a fundraiser in Les Wexner's home. That's alleged because he comes from Ohio. It just goes around and around and around. And by the way, with Peter Thiel, when he was asked about his connections to Epstein on Joe Rogan, he pushed the lie that Epstein was a financial genius. Rogan says, what's the deal with Epstein? Peter Thiel says, well, he's a tax genius. So that's a fucking lie.
That's a fucking lie.
It just goes around and around, and it's always Jewish.
Yep.
Donald Trump's Attorney General, Bill Barr.
What the fuck? How did fucking... Did I just click something? I don't know. That's some bullshit. Motherfucker. How the fuck did that just... I did not click.
From J.D. Vance. Finance and banks, because who runs the major private equity firms, venture firms? Who runs the actual banks? Jewish billionaires. He had connections to governments. Because who runs politics? Jewish billionaire donors. Jewish lawyers like Alan Dershowitz. Other Jewish fixers that exist in between. This is the real story of Jeffrey Epstein. When you shed a light on these 3 million emails that came out of the DOJ, what you don't find actually is any smoking gun about ritual satanic abuse. Sorry, you might suspect that. Well, we have a world of problems, don't we? And if Jeffrey Epstein is working with Ronald Lauder and working with Leon Black and working with Les Wexner, all these billionaires are supporting the war in Iraq. They're infiltrating the Trump administration to cut aid to Palestine. They're on the board of the Gaza Advisory Peace Board. Going all the way back to 1990, everywhere you see Epstein, you see a Jewish billionaire. And everywhere you see one of those Jewish billionaires, you see millions of dollars pouring into grooming Jewish leaders, advocacy for the state of Israel, and political lobbying in the U.S. government. That is the real story of Jeffrey Epstein. And that's the part that I don't see a lot of people covering. And I almost start to wonder if that is a layered conspiracy in and of itself. Because I watched Ian Carroll interview with Tucker Carlson today, and I didn't hear any mention of any of this.
It was closer to the end. It's only like
about how power works in America.
Yeah, this is where we were. Yep.
And rather than look at what is staring you in the face, something far more spectacular and sensational is being dangled in front of you to distract you. And so everyone is using the words satanic pedophile, and no one is using the word Jewish fixer. Everyone is using those words, pedophile elites. No one is using the words Jewish billionaires. And that's
Why aren't they,
what it is.
Like, they're not drawing that conclusion for the public at all. They'll tie these people together and tell you every other reason for the relationship except for what the reason for the relationship actually is. They're all Jewish. That's the one thing you just don't hear them speak of. The news, any sort of institution, any sort of traditional or legacy, anything. And most of these motherfuckers shilling on the right, shilling for Israel. Ben Shapiro, this guy still says, oh, there's nothing to see here, nothing to see here. It's incredible. He's such a piece of scum. Coin clipping piece of shit.
What unites them together is not their love of pedophilia or their worship of Satan. What unites them is their Jewish identity. That is why when they email each other, they talk about Goyim in a pejorative way. That is why they have these deep connections to the Israeli security state. That is why, down to a man, they are participating in the pro-Israel cause politically. That's what's going on here. So, that's the truth about Jeffrey Epstein. Once you put it together, it's unignorable and unavoidable that that's what he represents. So
it really
that's
is.
Our show about Jeffrey Epstein. That's our expose. That is what is new in the files. Okay, so he's connected to Lauder. Think about the degrees of separation, even in this Trump administration. The head of the Development Finance Corporation is Leon Black's kid. So Jeffrey Epstein's number 2 benefactor, his son, is heading up the Development Finance Corporation. Do you know how insane that is?
That is insane.
Jeffrey Epstein, the mastermind, the monster,
mastermind himself.
His number 2 benefactor that gave him maybe upwards of $300 million altogether. His son is running the Development Finance Corporation, which is our version of Belt and Road. So we're giving money away under the auspices that it's a private sector investment. Development Finance Corporation, that's like foreign aid, but investing in private entities. Do you know who else is on the board of the Development Finance Corporation? Marco Rubio,
picture.
The neocon who receives patronage from Miriam Adelson. Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, who is also a close personal friend of Jeffrey Epstein. So the head of the DFC, the Commerce Secretary, who is also on the board of the DFC, both 1 degree of separation from Jeff Epstein. Benjamin Black, who's the head of the DFC, writes an op-ed with Joe Lonsdale about how they're going to use the DFC. Joe Lonsdale co-founded the University of Austin, Texas with Barry Weiss. Joe Lonsdale's an investor in Barry Weiss, who became the head of CBS under Larry Ellison.
In Barry Weiss. That's
Larry
funny.
Ellison's connections to Trump.
As if she was a fighter or something, and you can own a piece of her.
And Lonsdale is also the head of the Founders Fund, which is created by Peter Thiel. Lonsdale is also a founding father of Palantir, which is created by Peter Thiel, who is also connected to Jeffrey Epstein, who Jeffrey Epstein invested $40 million into. The nominee for the chairman of the Federal Reserve is the son-in-law of Ronald Lauder, who Jeffrey Epstein laundered money for by purchasing
Nick
art
just posted
with
that.
Leon Black, who is, again, Jeffrey Epstein's number 2
Travis
benefactor.
Bickle himself.
Epstein's coordinating art purchases with Ronald Lauder.
I wonder what made him post
a
that.
Trump ally. Again, father-in-law of Trump's Federal Reserve nominee, who has given Trump millions of dollars over the years to his campaign and super PAC, and who's also doing art deals with Leon Black. negotiated by Epstein. Ronald Lauder happens to be the chair of the World Jewish Congress and the World Economic Forum. He succeeded Edgar Bronfman Sr., who he and Ronald Lauder and Les Wexner all formed the mega group 30 years ago to push war in Iraq with Frank Luntz, roommate to Kevin McCarthy. Okay? It goes
Kevin
around
McCarthy.
and around and around and around.
Kevin McCarthy
J.D.
is such a
Vance,
greasy,
who
slimy
runs for Senate,
piece
getting
of
money
shit.
from Peter Thiel, Jeff Epstein acolyte, and rumored to have had a fundraiser in Les Wexner's home. That's alleged because he comes from Ohio. It just goes around and around and around. And by the way, with Peter Thiel, when he was asked about his connections to Epstein on Joe Rogan, he pushed the lie that Epstein was a financial genius.
Bullshit.
Rogan says, what's the
That
deal
guy
with
is-
Epstein? Peter Thiel says, well, he's a tax genius. So that's a fucking lie.
That guy is decidedly average, or was. Epstein. Decidedly average. Nothing special whatsoever. Ridiculously and absurdly, he is typical. Average. At best. At best.
It just goes around and around, and it's always Jewish. Donald Trump's Attorney General, Bill Barr, had jurisdiction over the prison that Epstein killed
Right.
himself in 2019, and his father,
That's so
a Jew,
crazy.
got Jeff Epstein his start at Dalton School,
Yeah, the guy who's
where he
in
was
charge
hired
of
and tutored the
everything.
kids of Alan
Knew
Greenberg
this,
at
or
Bear
his
Stearns, where he
family
got his first job. Around and around.
Had history
always.
with this
is
fucking
how it
guy.
goes. Mark Rowan,
Dude.
Leon Black's partner, who's now with Jared Kushner on the Gaza Peace Board. And people want to say, it's a satanic thing, it's a pedophile thing, it's a Jewish thing.
Yeah, plainly.
Epstein is first
It's a
and foremost,
family
before
affair.
he's a pervert, before he's a occultist, before he's an eclectic, charismatic person, he is a Jew and a product
Jew
of
first
Jewry,
and foremost.
and works on behalf of Jewry and shows how Jewry operates in America, a patronage network, an intelligence network, a finance network, a political network, internationally, all rolled into one. That's what it is. And that's what the emails show. Black and white.